Chapter 377. If the three of them were still within the range of Bronze Bell Ancient City, then under the obliteration of the Infinite Realm's rules, all that awaited them would be death. It should be dead, Seiyu said with a trembling voice, her eyes filled with fear. The purple gold crown's complexion darkened. He took a deep breath and cupped his hands together. I am Qin Hanshi. I ask fellow Taoist not to blame us for the previous misunderstanding. With the strength of this evil spirit, it was naturally impossible for Qin Yu to touch what they were searching for. Qin Yu shook his head. In the previous situation, the fact that fellow Taoist Qin didn't attack has already surpassed my expectations. He paused for a moment and then said, I am Qin Yu. Qin Hanshi. Qin Yu. The two fellow Taoists glanced at each other. There was a dazed look in their eyes, as if they were familiar with each other. Suddenly, there was a loud cracking sound coming from the black sphere. The thunder that wove on its surface began to rapidly collapse and dissipate. This is bad. Hurry and run. But it was already too late. A strange fluctuation suddenly arrived from nothingness. Space seemed to freeze, and even the wind and the swaying branches fell silent. Qin Yu, Qin Hanshi, and Seiyu all turned to flee, but they couldn't move at all. Large patches of charred hair drilled out from a crack in the black sphere. As if two hands were forcefully tearing at it, the ugly head squeezed out with difficulty. It had shrunk to half its original size, and large patches of bald spots had appeared on its thick hair. Its face was covered with traces of stitches, and dozens of wounds crisscrossed each other. Its flesh and blood had turned black and decayed, with mucus constantly dripping down. A mass of hair was suddenly thrown out. With a loud bang, it fell to the ground and broke into several pieces. It was a shrunken and withered ancient scholar tree. A pained face appeared on the ancient scholar tree's trunk. It was Granny, ancient scholar. She wasn't human to begin with, but was formed from an ancient scholar tree. Now, all of her essence energy had been plundered and swallowed by the evil spirit. If it weren't for this ugly head, it wouldn't have been able to withstand the obliteration of the Infinite Realm's rules. You will all die. A deep roar filled with hatred caused one's soul to tremble. Qin Hanshi felt bitter in his heart. If it weren't for Granny Ancient Scholar, they wouldn't have been able to live until now. Seeing the charred hair curl up, a decisive look appeared in his eyes. Bang! A rich purple light erupted from his body, shattering the world's suppressing might. Qin Hanshi raised his sword, his eyes blazing with purple light. Die! Shwa! The long sword slashed down, and the purple sword light was like a tide, instantly tearing through everything, emitting a rumbling roar like a raging river. Qin Hanshi cultivated the purple world myriad sword Dao. Every time he stabbed out with his sword, he would use the power of the rules to mark a sword phantom within his sword heart. Although it was only a sword shadow, it contained all the sword intent. As the number of sword shadows increased, the sword heart gradually solidified, became stronger, and finally completed the transformation. This was Qin Hanshi's road of ascension. At this time, he released all of the sword shadows in his sword heart, erupting with an incomparably terrifying killing power. But this was also his final trump card. In the future, he would need to spend countless years to condense enough sword shadows to advance once more. Although he had paid a heavy price, it was not worth mentioning in the face of death. As long as he did not die today, he could regain everything he had lost. Qin Yu's eyes brightened, and he revealed a look of praise. He had already decided to go all out, but he never imagined that Qin Hanshi would have such a powerful trump card. This purple river was formed from pure sword intent. Its killing power was terrifying. Although it was inferior to a revered Blue Sea superpowerhouse, it wasn't much worse. The ugly head screamed out in anger. The curling hair instantly retracted, wrapping around it in layers. In the next moment, the purple river submerged it in a grand and majestic manner. Qin Hanshi's complexion was deathly pale. His body shivered, but he forcefully propped himself up and didn't fall down. He stared ahead. If this sword couldn't kill the evil spirit, then they would all die here. The purple river gradually dissipated, revealing the ugly head that had been in a miserable state. It was originally bald, but now less than 10% of its hair remained. The rampaging sword intent had left behind countless spiderweb-like wounds on its surface, as if it would shatter at any moment. But it was still alive. Its warm eyes were filled with endless hatred. The temperature between the heavens and earth crazily fell. Faint traces of an icy cold aura invaded the three people's bodies. The power of the killing curse. It had already given up on swallowing these three hateful little insects. Instead, it chose to make them suffer the greatest pain before their souls perished. Xiaoyu was the weakest. Black lines appeared on her face, and her face was twisted with pain and despair. Even so, she couldn't move or make a single sound. Qin Hanshi closed his eyes. Although he was filled with unwillingness, this was how the world was. No one had the chance to choose again. Since he had come here, death was his choice. He couldn't blame anyone else. But as he was waiting for death, a shocking aura erupted from beside him. His eyes widened as he saw Qin Yu step forwards. Kacha! Kacha! The power imprisoning him was forcefully torn apart. As his second step fell, his aura rose up once more. As his third step fell, his strength had reached an inconceivable level. The void began to tremble. An invisible strength spread outwards, breaking apart the frozen space. Then, spatial cracks recklessly stretched out like tentacles, crushing everything within range. Qin Hanshi's face was filled with shock. He never imagined that Qin Yu would be hiding a strength even more terrifying than his own. But he reacted quickly. Before the strength reached him, he grabbed onto the screaming Xiaoyu. With a stuffy cough, the two of them were sent flying far away. Qin Yu felt unprecedentedly powerful. A terrifying strength raced through his body, making him feel as if he could step on the entire world beneath his feet. The power of the burning heavens. Bloodstained, magic power burning, life burning. These three powers all detonated at this time. But the pain he imagined didn't appear. In fact, his entire consciousness became unprecedentedly calm. Qin Yu could clearly feel his blood boiling in his blood vessels. It was so hot and violent that it surpassed the limits of his mortal body. His body was constantly being damaged from the inside. Within his Dantian sea, the five-element nascent souls burned with five-colored flames. They revealed expressions of enjoyment, but there was actually a painful struggle in their eyes. And the most mysterious thing was that for the first time, Qin Yu could clearly feel his own lifespan. It was invisible and intangible, fusing into a cultivator's flesh and blood, existing everywhere. At this time, faint traces of white gas were constantly dispersing. He could feel his life force diminishing at a terrifying speed. But at this time, Qin Yu didn't feel any fear. He only calmly calculated how long he could maintain the power of the burning heavens in his current state. He soon obtained a result, 10 breaths of time. At most, he could last 10 breaths of time. This was a degree he could only achieve if his demon body collapsed, his nascent soul dissipated, and his lifespan dried up. If he didn't want to cause too much damage to himself, then he only had 2 breaths of time. Bang! Although all of this took time to describe, the truth was that the moment Qin Yu took his third step, his entire body accelerated. Like a meteor, he smashed into the ugly head. 5-colored sword lights flashed, submerging into its body. After a breath of time passed, a thought suddenly appeared in Qin Yu's calm mind. With just the 5-element sword's secret technique, he couldn't kill this evil spirit. He withdrew his palm, leaving only a finger. It shot out like a bolt of lightning, landing between the ugly head's eyebrows. A black light flashed. 2 breaths of time. The terrifying aura around Qin Yu rapidly faded away like a falling tide. His body became thinner, and his sunken eyes were filled with exhaustion. He could no longer maintain the black hair on his head. It instantly turned a deathly gray. Before returning to the beast hunting battalion, in order to avoid drawing attention, Qin Yu had stimulated his vitality to turn his gray hair black. Now that his lifespan was depleted once more, It was difficult to conceal it any longer. The ugly head's eyes widened, filled with a cruel, killing intent. Its scorched black hair curled towards Chinyu, but before it could touch his body, it fell to the ground. No! With a deep roar filled with unwillingness, the stitched-up face suddenly split open. This wasn't just a wound, but a wound that reached the deepest depths. From this crack, a man's head flew out. He was extremely young and handsome, and between his eyebrows there was a bright red dot of light. But just as it flew out, this beautiful head revealed a look of panic. The red dot of light between its eyebrows dimmed, losing all luster. Who? With a gust of wind, the flesh and blood on the surface of the head instantly turned to ash. All that was left over was a beautiful jade-like skull. That's right, what should have been a terrifying skull now only gave off an exquisite and beautiful feeling. Chinyu's body swayed. He could no longer resist the weakness in his body, and he fell to the ground. At almost the same time, there was the sound of something falling to the ground. Lying on the ground, Chin Hanshi cut a sorry figure. He looked up, and the two of them glanced at each other and laughed. It really wasn't easy to survive. Xiaoyu fainted. As the evil spirit died, the killing curse power also dissipated. She fell into an incomparably deep sleep. Between the heavens and earth, there was only the heavy panting of the two people. After a long time, Chinyu struggled to sit up. He took out a pill and swallowed it down. He heard the sound of footsteps and saw Chin Hanshi dragging his sword towards him. Fellow Taoist Chin, don't think too much about it. This skull is a rare treasure. He struggled to pick it up and form a law formula. The sword flew up and cut off the skull, revealing a crystalline blood-red light. An alluring smell wafted out from within. Just a single breath caused Chinyu to feel incomparably hungry. His stomach rumbled like thunder, and he couldn't help but reveal a look of shock. He would actually have an appetite for something like this. Damn it, was I poisoned and was I hallucinating? As his thoughts raced, he saw Chin Hanshi take a deep breath and reveal an expression of incomparable enjoyment. His eyes were filled with excitement. He turned around and saw Chinyu's expression. He immediately guessed what he was thinking, and his happy face stiffened. He roared out loud, "I am not a corpse-eating demon. Don't look at me like that." Chinyu awkwardly smiled. He also didn't think it was possible. Chin Hanshi walked over and sat down on the side. This simple movement caused him to gasp for breath, but the hand that held the skull was extremely steady. Chapter 378. Chinyu's eyes brightened. He was no longer the little greenie of the past. He now had a certain understanding of all sorts of precious treasures in the land of divinity and demons. He knew that this blood marrow was a transcendent treasure that could strengthen a cultivator's mortal body and even heal injuries. Its value was unimaginably high. Chin Hanshi smiled. "Do you know what it is now? There's more blood marrow here than I expected. We'll each take half. You must take good care of it. The true use of blood marrow is not to strengthen the body or heal injuries, but to activate a cultivator's bloodline. The half I give you can't even buy it with 1,000,000,000 spirit stones." Chinyu was a bit moved. He didn't know about the existence of blood marrow. If Chin Hanshi wanted to take it all for himself, he could do so. Suddenly, he felt a bit like a friend. Chin Hanshi quickly took out 2 jade bottles and divided the blood marrow in half. When the blood marrow was completely taken out, the crystalline jade-like skull instantly lost its luster and turned into powder. "Here's your share. I specially prepared this jade bottle. It can seal away the aura of the blood marrow, so it won't emit any effects." Chin Hanshi handed a bottle to Chinyu. "Let's hurry and leave. The disturbance here is too great. If others are drawn over, that would be too miserable." Chinyu smiled and nodded. He put away the jade bottle and climbed up. The two of them helped Xiaoyu up and left with difficulty. The 3 of them were lucky. Or perhaps it was because the aura of their previous battle had been too terrifying that all the surrounding monster beasts had been scared away. They walked 10 miles without encountering any dangers. "I can't hold on much longer. Let's rest here." Chin Hanshi took out a palm-sized stone and tossed it out. It grew in the wind and turned into a small courtyard. He turned to look at Chinyu, whose face had regained a bit of color. Qin Hanshi's eyes lit up with admiration. This sort of recovery speed was rare. However, this might involve Chinyu's secrets, so he naturally wouldn't ask. Let's go in. The three of them pushed open the door and entered the courtyard. Qin Hanshi took out an array disc and controlled it. The courtyard immediately emitted a layer of light that wrapped around it and sank into the ground. Through the layer of light, one could clearly see large tracts of earth and rock. But now, they had become as soft as water and could be easily pushed aside. After sinking 3,000 feet underground and activating a concealing array formation, Qin Hanshi relaxed. We're safe for now. Let's hurry up and restore ourselves. Qin nodded. He chose a room and pushed open the door. Qin Hanshi settled Seiyu down and then hurriedly began to cultivate. He released all of the sword intent that was marked in his sword heart. Luckily, he had obtained the blood marrow, otherwise he would have suffered a great loss. In his room, Chinyu carefully sensed his own condition. After a long time, he opened his eyes and bitterly smiled. Although the power of the burning heavens was tyrannical, the consumption of blood essence was also terrifying. In just 2 breaths of time, the amount of blood essence he consumed was equal to refining 10 storm flow magic tools. His cultivation had fallen to the early 4th level of divine soul, nearly falling to the 3rd level. As for his vitality, although he couldn't sense it clearly, it had been lost for at least a dozen years. This was only 2 breaths of time. The longer he maintained the power of the burning heavens, the more terrifying the losses would be. If he maintained it for 3 breaths of time, he would have to pay at least double the price. There was no need to mention the 4th or 5th breath of time. He was really risking his life. Chinyu took out a pill and swallowed it down to refine. In other words, he had enough pills so that he could quickly restore his condition. If it were a relatively poor divine soul cultivator, the wounds they received today would require at least a year or even longer to recover. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Chinyu pushed open the door and walked out. He walked to the center of the courtyard and looked up at the mud and stones above his head. Creak! Qin Hanshi opened the door to his room, a smile on his face. Chinyu, your injuries have healed? He walked over, a look of praise on his face. Your recovery speed is truly fierce. Chinyu smiled, not explaining. At this time, Seiyu walked out from another room, a look of shock on her face. Fellow Taoist Chinyu, if I offended you before, I hope you don't mind. She was well aware that if it hadn't been for Chinyu's final eruption, they would have all died in Bronze Bell Ancient City. Chinyu nodded. It's fine. I never minded. Seiyu relaxed a bit, but also felt a bit disappointed. She didn't dare to reveal this on her face. She bowed and returned to her room. Qin Hanshi suddenly said, In truth, this cousin of mine is quite good. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by a look from Chinyu. He coughed and calmly changed the topic. Chinyu, what do you plan on doing next? Chinyu said, The reason I came out today is to bid my farewells to you. Qin Hanshi hesitated for a moment. He said, The infinite realm is incomparably dangerous, and you have personally experienced it. If you aren't careful, there is the risk of dying. You and I have already obtained the blood marrow, and this harvest is enough to make one envious. Chinyu shook his head. I have other matters to attend to. Qin Hanshi was helpless. Everyone has their own ambitions, so I can't force you. Be careful when you leave. My cousin and I will stay here and wait for the infinite realm to close. He took out a jade slip. There's a map inside. It should be much better than the ones on the market. I have no use for it here, so I'll give it to you. Chinyu didn't decline. Since he regarded him as a friend, there were some things that didn't need to be said. Qin Hanshi patted his head. Also, directly refining something like the blood marrow is far too wasteful. If you know a demonic path alchemist, you can ask them to help you refine a blood marrow pill. Only then can you fully stimulate the efficacy of the blood marrow and restore your hair. Chinyu's gray hair was far too eye-catching. It was hard not to see it. He could faintly guess the reason, but he didn't ask. Chinyu smiled. All right, I understand. Fellow Taoist Qin, we will meet again if fate wills it. As he spoke, his figure flickered and he flew out from the protective barrier of the courtyard. A yellow light flashed around him and he melted into the earth, vanishing from sight. Qin Hanshi revealed a look of praise. Fellow Taoist Qin, you truly had many methods at his disposal. He even had such exquisite earth attribute methods. But he had no idea why he had lost so much of his lifespan. Xie pushed open the door and walked to his side. She said in a low voice, "Cousin, the blood marrow is incomparably important to you. No matter how much you have, it won't be enough. Qin, you doesn't even know, so why did you give him half?" Qin Hanshi smiled. "Even if it's only half of the blood marrow, it's more than enough for me to use. Moreover, Qin, you helped us a great deal. Without him, we would all have died." There were some words he didn't say. This fellow Taoist Qin, you gave off a rather wonderful feeling. He faintly felt that they would meet again. A yellow light flashed on the ground, and Qin Yu's figure appeared. He looked up towards Bronze Bell Ancient City and saw several faint black spots in the air. With a flash of light, Qin Yu turned and left. Qin Hanshi and Xie, you were underground. Although he wanted to look for the immortal sect disciples, he couldn't stay here for too long. In the skies above Bronze Bell Ancient City, several cultivators noticed Qin Yu's departing figure. But as they looked around and saw that he only had a second-level divine soul cultivation, although they were surprised, they didn't care too much about it. Every time the infinite realm opened, there would be some lucky fellows that managed to sneak in. But their final fates were never too wonderful. Now, the most important thing was to search for the secrets of Bronze Bell Ancient City. Just what sort of lucky chance could trigger such a terrifying slaughter? After flying out several hundred miles, Qin Yu took out the map that Qin Hanshi had given him. Because he had already activated it, he only needed to pour in magic power to display it. As he thought, this map was much larger than the one he used. There were also more red danger zones, and there were even some markings of the gathering points of the native life forms. Qin Hanshi was quite thoughtful. He hadn't found Ning Ling, but he had gained a friend. This sort of feeling wasn't bad. Whoosh! Qin Yu's figure flew far away. Above the black swamp, Qin Yu flew at a low altitude. Suddenly, he frowned. With a flick of his sleeves, he killed the strange fish that had ambushed him, and a wisp of smoke fused into his body. He paused for a moment and looked over the boundless swamp, a bit of anxiety in his eyes. This was the 3rd month since he had entered the infinite realm. Qin Yu had walked through many places and hunted down many monster beasts. He had found several precious treasures and precious spirit plant seeds, and he had even fought with native life forms that cultivated the mortal body. But he hadn't encountered a single immortal sect cultivator. Although the infinite realm was large, there would always be many immortal sect cultivators that came in every time it opened. There was no reason he hadn't encountered any after so long. It was highly likely that the immortal sect cultivators had gathered together to obtain some precious lucky chance. There was a precedent for this. After all, with the immortal sect's methods, it wasn't difficult to investigate the infinite realm. This was also a situation that Qin Yu didn't want to see the most. The infinite realm would remain open for at most a year, and a quarter of that time had already passed. If he couldn't find Ning Ling before it closed, all of his efforts would have been in vain. Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed his anxious thoughts. His figure flashed, and he continued forwards. After flying for another 2 days, he saw the edge of the swamp. At this time, a group of cultivators suddenly flew over. As Qin Yu saw them, he turned to leave. In these last 3 months, he hadn't bothered with anyone. "Fellow Taoist, please wait a moment." A figure howled over, as fast as a shadow as it blocked his path. Qin Yu frowned, a cold intent in his eyes. He hadn't been able to find anyone from the immortal sect, and was already feeling a bit depressed. At this time, he found it a bit difficult to restrain himself. The cultivator's heart chilled. He hurriedly said, "Fellow Taoist, please don't misunderstand. I have no ill intentions. It's just that we have discovered a secret zone and need the help of a cultivator skilled in water attribute magic arts. I saw fellow Taoist fly through the swamp, and water vapor lingered around your body. It's clear you're a master of this field. I wonder if you could help us? If fellow Taoist is interested, we could discuss the conditions. Qing took a deep breath. I have important matters to attend to. You should find someone else. The cultivator revealed a helpless expression. All right, Qing Yu rapidly flew away. At this time, the dozen-plus cultivators that were waiting behind him flew over. He actually refused? A young man frowned. Brother Su, did you not give him any promises? Su Wenze forced a smile. He didn't even give me a chance to state my conditions. The person shook his head. That's troublesome. You and I aren't skilled in water attribute magic arts. It will be difficult to find a suitable helper. It's good that he left. If that person really agreed, I would have stopped him. A woman suddenly said from the crowd. Su Wenze was surprised. Why? The woman revealed a look of disdain. Not too long ago, outside Square Wave City, when my uncle brought me to compete for the infinite token, I saw this person. It's just that his hair had changed color. When he saw two blue sea cultivators fight, he was so frightened that he fled far away. What use is there in having such courage? Moreover, this person only has a mere second-level divine soul cultivation. Even if he helped, he wouldn't be able to help us. Su Wenze was startled. He thought that Qing Yu really did seem to be at the second level of divine soul, but his eyes were truly terrifying. A middle-aged cultivator suddenly said, Miss Feng, you cannot be careless. That person who left isn't simple at all. Feng Yinyan curled her lips. She had to respect the guardian that her uncle had sent. Even if she didn't think much of it, she could only nod in agreement. Su Wenze smiled. All right. Let's hurry up and find a helper. Perhaps there might be some good treasures inside. Shwa. Chapter 379. Another 10 days passed. A seemingly tranquil mountain valley attracted Qing Yu's attention. He carefully looked around and finally discovered something strange. Quiet, incomparably quiet. Time seemed to come to a standstill in this mountain valley. There wasn't the least bit of wind, and all the branches and leaves of the ancient trees were still. It was like he was only looking at a painting. Qing Yu revealed a dignified expression. He took out a map and looked over it. This was a white area without any markings, but it was clear that this place wasn't ordinary at all. As he thought of the immortal sect cultivators that had disappeared without a trace, he hesitated for a moment. Then, he quietly flew over and landed outside the mountain valley. Even here, Qing Yu hadn't sensed anything different. If he hadn't been careful enough, he wouldn't have discovered anything strange about this mountain valley. Standing at the entrance of the valley, he saw that it wasn't too large. It was only around 1,000 feet wide, and the oval-shaped space was unobstructed. There wasn't anything strange about it. Qing Yu took a deep breath and carefully entered the mountain valley. He had already prepared himself to deal with any dangers, but what he didn't expect was that everything was calm. The mountain valley was still quiet, so quiet that one could only hear the sound of Qing Yu's footsteps rubbing against the grass. But at this time, not only did he not feel relaxed, but an inexplicable fear rose in his heart. As he walked in this quiet and unchanging environment, he felt as if he were stepping on raging waves, as if he would be swallowed up if he wasn't careful. Soon, Qing Yu arrived at the end of the mountain valley. The stone walls weren't too steep and were covered with green moss and vines. Occasionally, the stones below would be exposed like sunken eyes. Qing Yu frowned. He stared at the stone wall in front of him. After a long period of silence, he lifted a hand and his fingertips cut through the void. Chilla. Like a piece of cloth being torn apart, the mountain wall, vines, and green moss were like a painting, and a crack the size of a person was torn open. A wild aura surged out, instantly breaking the tranquility of the mountain valley. Space shattered and the camouflage was shed, revealing the true appearance of the mountain valley. The entrance turned into a vortex, making it impossible to see the outside world. For 1,000 feet around Qing Yu, everything was the same as before. The only difference was that all the soil, stones, and vegetation had turned black, as if they had been invaded by some evil aura. The stone wall in front of him had long since disappeared, revealing a narrow opening. The wild aura that shattered the camouflage of space had erupted from this opening. However, the strange thing was that this valley seemed to be in some kind of special sealed state. The aura inside was extremely violent, but it didn't leak out in the slightest. Qianyu looked up at the skies. He reached out and grasped a black stone, tossing it into the air. As it flew out of the mountain valley, a black light appeared and the stone quietly disintegrated into powder. His pupils shrank. Although this black light didn't emit the least bit of aura, he could still feel a great terror from it. With his powerful king-step demon body, if he were to be swept by that black light, he would likely suffer the same fate as the black stone. Qianyu's complexion darkened. As expected, this was a danger zone of the infinite realm. Only by isolating it from the outside world could it shield itself from the infinite realm's rules. And in these danger zones, most of them were extremely terrifying existences slumbering. Qianyu had the combat strength of a revered blue sea, but in front of these slumbering existences, he was far too weak. He couldn't help but feel a bit of regret, but he immediately suppressed it. He stared at the mountain valley in front of him, clenched his teeth, and carefully walked in. Since he was already here, he would only be able to find a way out if he truly ventured deeper. The moment he stepped in the mountain valley, Qianyu stiffened. In the distant black fog, for lantern-like eyes instantly locked onto him. A second-level divine, Soul Jr., isn't worth worrying about at all. I'll kill it first, and then deal with that little baby. Two thought fluctuations transmitted out at the same time. Then, the four eyeballs vanished from sight. There was a heaven-shaking, rumbling sound in the black fog. The terrifying aura seemed to be absorbed by the black fog, but just a trace of it was enough to set off the terrifying fluctuations that Qianyu felt just now. If it weren't for the black fog, the entire mountain valley would have been broken apart by both sides. Qianyu took a deep breath. His body regained its freedom. His heart raced like thunder, and his face was pale with fear. Although he hadn't seen their true bodies, just those four eyeballs alone allowed Qianyu to feel a nearly tangible aura of death. He didn't doubt that the master of any one of these eyes had the ability to destroy his body and soul with a wave of their hands. Luckily, both sides were in the middle of their battle, and neither of them cared about Qianyu's weak cultivation, so they didn't care about him at all. But this was only temporary. Once the battle ended and either of them won, they absolutely wouldn't mind eating a post-battle dessert. Qianyu's thoughts raced, but soon he discovered that it was impossible for him to escape. The entire mountain valley was sealed away by an invisible will. Even if he erupted with the power of the burning heavens, he still wouldn't be able to break free. Looking at the black fog in the distance, Qianyu paled. Did he have to wait here for death to arrive? No, absolutely not. There had to be a chance. There had to be a chance. Qianyu forcefully suppressed his fear and anxiety. He took several deep breaths, and his thoughts raced. Soon, he found the only hope that wasn't completely hopeless. It was clear that these two terrifying existences were currently engaged in a brutal battle. If they perished together, Qianyu would be safe and sound. Of course, the chances of this happening were extremely small. But if the winning side was severely wounded, Qianyu still had a chance to live. The power of the burning heavens. Qianyu never thought that he would be forced to use it again so soon after using it. Moreover, this time it might not be the same as when he killed the evil spirit. It would only take a short 2 breaths of time. With a bit of bitterness in his heart, Qianyu sat down cross-legged. He took out a pill and swallowed it down. Since he had no other choice, he could only work hard to make himself stronger. Even if it was just the tiniest bit of improvement, he might be able to survive when his life was at stake. Within his soul space, Spirity's aura became increasingly ethereal. Her appearance hadn't changed at all, but she seemed to have gained an infinite charm. Just a single glance was enough to enchant one's mind. At this time, she frowned, a dignified expression on her face. Shua, a shadow appeared. It laughed and said, "The little master seems to be in trouble." Spirity's frown deepened. "It's not convenient for me to do anything. Are you going to stand idly by?" This shadow was the summoned life form that had fused into Qianyu's shadow. Its laughter was filled with happiness. Although I was summoned by the little master, and I will suffer a backlash if he dies, you should know that it isn't difficult for me to live on. As for you, hee, as a partner soul, once the little master perishes, you will vanish in a thin air. Spirity's eyes shined with a cold intent. What conditions do you have? The summoned life form proudly said. Simple. Tell me who you are. I only have one condition. Otherwise, you can make a bet. Perhaps I will suddenly change my mind and help the little master survive. Spirity didn't have any expression. All right, I agree. With several more chuckles, the summoned life form vanished from sight. From start to finish, Qin Yu's soul didn't sense any of this at all. The slaughter in the black fog continued. What Qin Yu didn't know was that before the infinite realm's annihilation arrived, these two terrifying life forms had joined forces to lay down this sealed space. They had fallen into a deep slumber, waiting for a chance to survive. Endless years passed, and the infinite realm's rules became increasingly broken. They were no longer willing to endure these terrifying, slumbering life forms. They were roused from their slumber and discovered the situation they were in. Unless their strength could rise a step further, they would die soon. Forced into a deep slumber, it was already difficult for them to maintain their strength and prevent it from fading away, much less take another step further. Thus, there was only one choice left: swallow the other. No matter which one it was, as long as they ate the other, they would be able to rise in strength and survive. But the reason they chose to join forces was because their strengths were similar. It wouldn't be easy to determine a winner or loser in this battle. Before Qin Yu entered the mountain valley, they had already fought for 3 days. And now another 5 days had passed. After fighting for an entire 8 days, both sides were exhausted. But their movements were still as swift and powerful as before. They each had cards in their hands that they hadn't used yet, because only at the best opportunity would they be able to erupt with a sure kill might. On the 12th day, Qin Yu was suddenly awakened from his cultivation. His eyes widened in amazement as he looked at the black fog deep within the mountain valley. An unimaginably terrifying aura wildly erupted from within. One blue and one blue, each of them occupying half of the black fog as they crazily slaughtered each other. Qin Yu was well aware that if he fell into the range of this battle, even if he erupted with the power of the burning heavens, he would only be able to last for 1 or 2 breaths of time before being blasted to pieces. He was going all out. His eyes lit up with anticipation. It would be best if they perished together, but at the very least the victor would be severely wounded. Only like this would he have a chance of surviving. Blue and blue light collided. Such a terrifying might naturally couldn't be maintained for too long. The blue light gradually weakened, and when half of it faded away, the blue light brightened. In an instant, most of the blue light trembled and collapsed. I can't accept this. As a despairing thought fluctuation spread out, the black fog quieted down. The battle had come to an end. The victor had appeared, and the loser had died. Qin Yu was so nervous that his palms began to sweat. At this time, the black fog began to recede like a tide, and the figures of 2 massive beings began to appear. When all of the fog was sucked into the terrifying life form's body, its eyes instantly fell on Qin Yu, killing intent blazing in them. As expected, this sort of terrifying existence wouldn't be careless at all. Once the battle ended, it would immediately choose to kill Qin Yu, to not leave behind even the slightest hidden danger. This was something that any powerful life form that had lived for a long time would have. He had to fight. Qin Yu stood up. His heart wildly beat, and the power of the burning heavens erupted. His blood, magic power, and vitality burned together. Bang! A powerful aura crazily erupted. The victor's giant eyes revealed a trace of surprise that immediately turned into mockery. With its strength, even if it was severely wounded, it could still easily kill a revered blue sea. This little foreign cultivator had actually hidden such strength. This was actually a pretty good dessert. It would be able to replenish its lost strength. It opened its great mouth, and a terrifying blue light appeared. The shadow beneath Qin Yu's feet began to wriggle as another figure appeared. Bang! With a loud explosion, most of the victor's head was blown apart. Its massive body swayed for a moment before it crashed to the ground. The already dead loser actually opened his eyes and let out a maniacal laugh. "You will die in front of me in the end." Chapter 380. Qin Yu was stunned for a moment. He quickly extinguished the power of the burning heavens. He only maintained it for a breath of time, so it didn't cause too much damage to him. They had actually died. Even he never imagined such an ending would occur. But soon, ecstasy replaced his astonishment. A brilliant smile lit up Qin Yu's face. Within his soul space, Spirity's eyes widened. She chuckled. Her master's luck was truly unimaginable. She looked down, her eyes seeming to pierce through all as they fell onto the shadows on the ground. The corners of her lips curled up. The summoned life form was already prepared to attack. Its lips twitched, and it couldn't help but reveal a bit of surprise deep in its eyes. In its understanding, anyone with a terrifying amount of luck would have astonishing growth attributes and would be favored by transcendent will. This sort of person, as long as they didn't perish along the way, would eventually become an extremely terrifying figure in the endless years to come. Perhaps its attitude towards its little master could change a little, and it could help him a little. As these thoughts flashed through its mind, the summoned life form appeared. "Congratulations, Master, I need their souls. I ask Master for permission." Within his soul space, Spirity sneered. She said with a sound transmission, "Master, this summoned life form has a mysterious origin. But, since you summoned it, it has a restrictive ability. As long as you don't allow it to swallow you, there is nothing it can do." Qin Yu's eyes flashed. Spirity was clearly saying that this was an excellent opportunity to extort him. His thoughts raced, and he made a decision. He said, "Although you call me Master, I still don't know your name, where you come from, or what methods you have." The summoned life form gnashed its teeth in hatred. Spirity's sound transmission couldn't be hidden from him, but the souls of these two terrifying existences were indeed important to him. He could only squeeze out a laugh. "I have just awakened and lost a great deal of my memories. I only managed to restore some of them not too long ago. Master can call me undead, but I cannot say where I came from, otherwise there will be great karma. It is best if Master doesn't know. As for my abilities, I am skilled in dealing with souls, and I also have methods to escape. For instance, these two dead souls. After I swallow them, Master can shadow step to 20 miles away." Within his soul space, Spirity revealed a dignified expression. She said with a sound transmission, "Master, although he didn't say much, he should be trustworthy." Qin Yu's thoughts raced. Awakening, an unspeakable land. The origins of this summoned life form were becoming increasingly mysterious. Fortunately, Little Spirit's words implied that he could restrict the summoned life form. The partner spirit shared weal and woe with him, so it naturally wouldn't lie to him. "I hope you won't hide anything from me in the future. Go, they are yours." The summoned life form was overjoyed. Its body twisted slightly and appeared beside the two enormous corpses, directly entering one of them. Qin Yu's soul asked, "Spirity, these two terrifying life forms had at least peak blue sea strength, and their souls had already condensed, so why did they die along with their mortal bodies?" Spirity explained, reporting to Master, "In order to escape the obliteration of the infinite realm's rules, they fused their souls with their mortal bodies. When their mortal bodies died, their souls also died. This dead soul is hidden within their mortal bodies." While the two of them were talking, the summoned creature had already crawled out of the corpse and impatiently entered another one. Soon, all the souls were cleanly swallowed. The summoned life form flashed and appeared beside Qin Yu. "Master, there seems to be another reason why they are hiding here. You can go look for them. Perhaps there will be some harvests. I need to hurry up and digest them." As it spoke, it melted into a shadow and vanished. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. He stepped forwards and arrived beside the two massive beings. He didn't look for lucky chances, but used a secret technique to appraise them. Soon, the terrifying life form that died first began to emit a thick blood-red light. Chinyu was pleasantly surprised. This secret technique could determine whether or not a corpse could be refined into a stormflow magic tool. When he participated in the South Shy Nation's youth alchemy competition, he had passed through the wilderness and obtained some suitable materials. But with his current strength, even if he refined these materials, they wouldn't be of much help to him. The giant corpse in front of him was different. It was suspected to be a terrifying peak blue sea life form. If it was successfully refined, the might of this superstorm flow magic tool would reach an unimaginable degree. It could even contend with a tribulation immortal level existence. Of course, even if it was strong enough, with a tribulation immortal's control of the world's rules, they could instantly use the power of the rules to offset most of the damage. The remaining parts would naturally lose their threat. Chinyu was overjoyed. He never thought of using the super storm flow to resist a tribulation immortal. Once this thing was activated, even a peak blue sea existence would suffer greatly. This was a trump card, even if he didn't have any other harvests. Just this corpse was an unimaginable harvest. 5-colored sword light appeared. Chinyu lifted his hand and pressed down. The sword point pierced through his skin, emitting the sound of iron. Feeling the trembling and the pain, Chinyu was shocked. This terrifying life form's mortal body was actually powerful to such a degree. He erupted with the 5-element sword with all his strength and borrowed the invisible sharpness of the sword, but he was only barely able to cut through its flesh and blood. Luckily, he could, otherwise the situation would be awkward. Could he maintain the state of detonating the heaven-burning lands and cut through it? He feared he would die before he could even cut open this terrifying life form's belly. Chinyu rejoiced inwardly. He buried his head in the giant corpse of this terrifying life form. It looked like a giant cocoon, and besides its teeth, it didn't have a single bone. What could be used to refine a storm flow magic tool were actually hidden deep within its flesh and blood, where soft blue veins could be seen. These blue veins grew out from the flesh and blood and were incomparably tough. Even though Chinyu used the 5-element sword with all his strength, he still had to expend a great deal of effort to cut off the first one. The originally soft and tough blue veins instantly became incomparably hard after separating from the terrifying life form's corpse. With Chinyu's cultivation, even when his hands erupted with all his strength, he still couldn't bend them in the slightest. From this, it could be seen just how hard they were. If he used this as a material to refine the superstorm flow, this might would leave one looking forward to it. Chinyu was overjoyed. He buried his head in the stinking flesh and blood, transforming into the most terrifying corpse-tearing demon, not letting go of even a single hidden blue vein. He hadn't slept or rested for 3 days and had swallowed dozens of pills. Then, he cut off the last piece of flesh and carefully examined it once more. After making sure he hadn't missed anything, he let out a long breath and stood up. Within his mortal body, there was a loud, crackling sound. Even with Chinyu's powerful demon body, maintaining this state of full strength for 3 days still left his entire body aching. But all this was worth it. Within this terrifying life form, he had found a total of 1,024 blue veins. Not only were these the strongest materials Chinyu had obtained so far, but they were also the most numerous. The might of this superstorm flow left him filled with anticipation. Chinyu had an impulse to immediately refine it, but he finally suppressed this thought. Refining materials that were suspected to be at the peak of divine soul was bound to be difficult. If he wanted to refine over 1,000 of them, he would need to spend a massive amount of time. The infinite realm was only open for a limited time. He couldn't delay here. Looking at the other corpse, Chinyu twisted his aching body and light began to circulate around his fingers once more. Although it wasn't suitable to refine a storm flow magic tool, this terrifying life form was extremely powerful and the materials from its body were bound to be precious. After spending 2 hours, Chinyu obtained a horn as well as a pair of eyes. The horn was crystalline and translucent. He could clearly see that there were runes contained within, and he could faintly feel the faint destructive aura it emitted. After the eyes separated from the corpse, they turned into 2 round beads. Fog lingered around them, making them seem unpredictable. As for the other materials, Chinyu glanced at the claws and fangs that caused one's heart to race. He revealed a helpless expression. This was because this corpse had an even more astonishing degree of toughness. Only the horn and eyeballs were easy to obtain. If he wanted to obtain the other materials, he would have to slowly grind them down bit by bit. That would take far too much time. After placing all the materials into his storage ring, Chinyu let go of the 2 corpses and began to search through the mountain valley. Since the summoned life form had spoken, it had clearly sensed something. He easily found the 2 terrifying life forms' lairs. But they were completely empty without anything at all. Chinyu frowned. He carefully searched through the first lair. Looking at the scales that had fallen off in a corner, it should be the terrifying life form that had died first. He searched every corner and swept through every inch of the place with his divine sense, but he found nothing. Chinyu turned and flew out. He entered the second lair and searched even more carefully. This was because the terrifying life form in this lair was clearly weaker. Yet, it was able to suddenly attack after faking its death and kill an existence stronger than itself. Perhaps it was because it had grasped something extremely powerful. Nothing. Chinyu turned the entire lair upside down, but didn't find anything. He wanted to ask the summoned life form, but it had already fallen asleep in the shadows. Why wasn't it here? Could the summoned life form have sensed something wrong? There was a light sound beneath Chinyu's feet, as if he had kicked something. But when he looked down, there was nothing there. Nothing? Chinyu's complexion was dignified. He squatted down and rubbed the ground. Soon, he felt an icy cold sensation. He had grasped onto something that was half a disc. Moreover, there were extremely complex lines on the surface of this object. But he still couldn't see them. Even when he swept his divine sense through it, there was nothing. He couldn't see it, and he couldn't sense it with his divine sense. If he hadn't caught it in the book, he would have never believed that such a strange object existed in this world. This must be what the summoned life form was talking about. Spirity, do you recognize what this is? Chinyu asked with a soul sound transmission. Spirity hesitated. This seems to be the method of some powerful cultivators from ancient times. But I have no idea what it is. Chinyu nodded. No matter what it was, this object was absolutely abnormal. He could wait until the summoned life form woke up and ask it then. At this time, the strength that imprisoned the entire mountain valley began to rapidly dissipate. Chinyu looked down at the half-disc that he couldn't see. He faintly felt that this seal might be related to it. It seemed that there was only half of it left in the mountain valley. But, to be cautious, Chinyu returned to the first lair and quickly searched through it. Not finding anything was within his expectations. He didn't stay any longer and quickly left. Not long after Chinyu left, 2 figures appeared outside the mountain valley. Just as they revealed a happy expression, their complexions changed. Shwa, shwa. In the blink of an eye, the 2 people rushed into the mountain valley. As they saw the corpses of 2 terrifying life forms, their pupils shrank in endless shock. Chapter 381. These 2 people were cultivators from a large sect. Many years ago, a master from this sect had entered the infinite realm and inadvertently entered the mountain valley. Afterwards, this master didn't die. Rather, he reached an agreement with these 2 terrifying life forms. In the future, every time the infinite realm opened, this sect would send disciples in and give these 2 terrifying life forms some treasures in exchange for scales and other things that they shed. Because of this, the cultivators of this sect were well aware of just how strong these 2 terrifying life forms were. When the infinite realm opened this time, these 2 people were extremely unlucky. They were transmitted to an extremely remote place, and in addition to some accidents, it took them nearly 4 months to arrive. But what did they see? The mountain valley seal had vanished, and the 2 terrifying life forms had died. Even their corpses had been cruelly disintegrated. How could such a powerful existence appear in the infinite realm? The 2 people didn't dare to think about it any further. They entered the mountain valley and searched for treasures. Then, they hurried away with ecstatic expressions. After Chinyu left the mountain valley, he cultivated for a short period of time. Although he only maintained the power of the burning heavens for a single breath of time, he still used up some of it. 3 days later, he opened his eyes, a sharp light flashing within them. When he entered the infinite realm this time, he hadn't planned on searching for any treasures. But in the end, he had obtained many harvests. Could this be considered an unintentional willow growing into a shade? Chinyu revealed a helpless smile. But at this time, his complexion changed. There were cultivators fighting nearby. This sort of matter was common in the infinite realm, and he simply didn't want to pay attention to it. But soon, Chinyu revealed a look of pleasant surprise. He flicked his sleeves and put away the array disc before howling away. In the air, several figures were fighting together. 5 people had joined forces to besiege a white-haired old man. This person's expression was cold, and his attacks were tyrannical. Even though he was fighting 1 against 5, he actually held the upper hand. A golden-robed youth stood on the ground. The phantom of a palace was embroidered on his chest. He coldly said, "The treasures I see are mine. You dare to compete with me? You have no idea of death or danger." Across from him, 7 or 8 cultivators had pale complexions, and blood trickled down the corners of their mouths. They were the group of people that Yu had fought at the edge of the swamp. Feng Yunyun and Su Wenze were among them. At this time, their eyes were filled with anxiety and anger. When they found the secret zone, they were pleasantly surprised. There was actually an ancient treasure inside that seemed to contain a powerful inheritance. However, they had not expected that the moment they took out their secret treasures, they would be snatched away by the person in front of them. Although he was alone, his strength was enough to suppress all of them. Moreover, this person's Tao protector was even more terrifying. All of their Tao protectors working together could only barely hold on. But what was even more terrifying was this person's identity. The golden robes were ordinary, but in addition to the palace embroidered on the chest, this represented a supreme influence in the land of divinity and demons, the immortal sect. This cultivator was a disciple of the immortal sect. No wonder he had such strength, and his Tao protector was even more terrifying. Could it be that the disciples of the immortal sect also want to forcefully rob others? Su Wenze roared. The immortal sect cultivator sneered. The strong eat the weak. What does that have to do with status? Since you found the treasure for me, I'll spare your lives. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. Feng Yunyun was enraged, but she was held back by Su Wenze. Don't be rash. He sucked in a deep breath. Protectors, come back. We admit defeat. The 5 Tao protectors, who were already struggling to hold on, heaved a sigh of relief when they heard this and hurriedly retreated. But at this time, the immortal sect Tao protector suddenly shouted out loud and thrust out his palm. The middle-aged cultivator in front of him stuffily coughed and was sent flying backwards. Blood gushed out from his nose and mouth as he smashed into the ground, creating a deep pit. Feng Yunyun cried out, "Protector Li!" Her face was filled with anger. We already admitted defeat, so why must we be so heavy-handed? Is this how the immortal sect does things? The immortal sect Tao protector's voice was gloomy. To fight with us is to disrespect the immortal sect and must be punished. Little girl, do you have any objections? Protector Li hurriedly stopped her. Miss Feng, I'm fine, cough, cough. I just need to rest for some time. Don't provoke the immortal sect fellow Taoists. Humph. The immortal sect Tao protector turned and landed on the ground. The immortal sect cultivator smiled in satisfaction. It would have been better if you had done this earlier. Why did you have to put yourself in such a difficult situation and suffer so much pain? He turned to leave. Chinyu rapidly flew over. He stopped in the distance and cupped his hands together. This immortal sect, fellow Taoist. Before he finished speaking, the immortal sect cultivator flicked his sleeves, and the phantom of a great wave appeared, crashing down upon him. Qin Yu's complexion changed. He punched out a fist, and the great wave phantom trembled and collapsed. He took several steps back, a gloomy expression on his face. He took a deep breath and said, "Fellow Taoists from the immortal sect, I have no ill intentions. I just want to inquire about some matters." The golden-robed immortal sect disciple coldly smiled. "Don't think that just because you block my attack you have the qualifications to speak. Just who do you think you are to ask me questions?" The reason he didn't kill Su Wenze and Feng Yunyun was because these people all had extraordinary backgrounds. As a disciple of the immortal sect, although he didn't fear them, it was inevitable that he would provoke trouble. But this person in front of him actually dared to block his path. He was simply seeking death. Qin Yu took a deep breath, and his eyes turned cold. He didn't like the way this immortal sect cultivator did things to begin with. It was only because he needed help from this person that he forced himself to endure. Now, it seemed that this person was simply a rabid dog. It was impossible for him to obtain information about Ning Ling through him. But in the end, he was still an immortal sect cultivator. Qin, you didn't have any thoughts of becoming enemies with such a colossus, and Ning Ling was also someone from the immortal sect. Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. Then he turned to leave. But what he didn't know was that his cold eyes had already angered this immortal sect cultivator who was in a very bad mood. The immortal sect cultivator coldly said, "You want to leave? Get the hell down here." He lifted a hand, and powerful fluctuations of strength erupted between the heavens and earth. A giant blue hand appeared and grasped at Qin Yu. Before it arrived, a terrifying feeling already descended. Even a 4th or 5th level divine soul cultivator would be directly killed. Qin Yu's complexion paled. He smiled and welcomed this attack. This immortal sect cultivator had directly attacked him, and now he was even more heavy-handed, wanting to kill him. Humph! Qin Yu took a step forwards. Between his fingers, 5-colored light erupted. Puff! The giant blue hand trembled. Several cracks appeared on it before it collapsed and dissipated. What? The immortal sect disciple's complexion changed. You were actually hiding your cultivation to block my high mystic blue origin hand. No wonder you dared to disrespect my immortal sect. But today, I will let you know what it means to seek your own death. Qin Yu was so angry that he laughed. This immortal sect disciple was truly shameless. He had directly labeled him as disrespecting the immortal sect. But soon, a dignified expression appeared on his face. Invisible threads seemed to appear between the heavens and earth. They circled around each other and came from all directions. These threads were invisible and intangible, but Qin Yu felt a great threat. They were like sharp blades that could easily cut apart anything. Qin Yu lifted a hand and slapped out. The 5-element swords erupted. 5-color divine light instantly swept out in all directions. He revealed a helpless look. He had just broken into divine soul and hadn't had time to perceive the rules and create new magic arts. If he fought with others, he could only rely on the 5-element swords. His methods were far too simple. Once the matter of the infinite realm was over, he would have to go into seclusion for some time. Hum, hum. In the void, phantoms of threads appeared, colliding with the 5-colored divine light. But the powerful 5-color divine light wasn't able to stop them at all. The phantoms rapidly pierced through, hurtling straight towards Qin Yu. The immortal sect disciple coldly sneered. What he used was a secret technique of the immortal sect. This was more than enough to roll over the vast majority of those at the same level. Although this person was hiding his strength, beneath this secret technique, all that awaited him was death. Qin Yu did indeed feel an intense threat. With a loud shout, he lifted a hand and pointed outwards. Strong winds stirred up, and the clouds above his head tumbled backwards. The phantom of a finger appeared, stirring up the spiritual strength of the heavens and earth. It rapidly grew in size and collided with the phantoms of threads. The complexion of the immortal sect disciple changed. He watched as the phantoms of threads that disregarded the five-color divine light seemed to suffer a heavy blow as they began to tremble and collapse. In the blink of an eye, a gap was torn open and the phantom finger broke through, shooting straight towards the immortal sect disciple. Puff! The immortal sect disciple spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes filled with disbelief as he screamed out, "Kill him! Kill him for me!" The immortal sect protector coldly snorted. He stood in front of the disciple and lifted a hand. In space, a cross-shaped black crack appeared. In the next moment, the phantom finger collided with it. Without a sound, the cross-shaped black crack and the phantom finger vanished from sight. The immortal sect protector's confident face stiffened. He cried out, "Secret rule art!" His eyes instantly revealed a burning heat. The immortal sect disciple's eyes widened. "Protector, what did you say?" The immortal sect protector hurriedly sent him a sound transmission. "Gonghai, the power of this person's magic technique is far inferior to my annihilation cross/. If it can disappear together with it, then it must be because of the power of the rules. Thus, it is highly likely that this person has grasped some formidable secret rule art." The immortal sect disciple Gonghai's eyes brightened. As an immortal sect cultivator, he naturally knew just how precious secret rule arts were. Even within the immortal sect, secret rule arts were considered extremely precious secret inheritances. Only core disciples, those that had great merits, or those with outstanding potential would have a chance of being bestowed them. When Gonghai was in his hometown, he was a peerless, proud son of heaven. He passed through layers upon layers of difficulties and was accepted into the immortal sect. But in the immortal sect, his talent could only be considered average, perhaps even a bit lower. In the last several dozen years, he had only obtained a low-level secret art, the mystic blue origin hand, and a low-level secret art, the void thread slaughter. With these two methods and his 9th-level divine soul cultivation, as well as a series of explosive abilities, he could easily roll over the vast majority of divine soul cultivators. Above secret arts were secret arts, and once a secret art reached a certain degree of profoundness and contained the power of the rules, then it could be called a secret rule art. The power of the rules here wasn't something that could be guided or controlled. Rather, it was something that was automatically derived from the secret art. It had certain powerful attributes, and those that could create secret rule arts were at least at the tribulation immortal level. To a certain degree, secret rule arts already possessed an extremely small portion of the might of a tribulation immortal and possessed all sorts of inconceivable strengths. With Gonghai's talent, it was impossible for him to obtain a secret rule art in 100 years or even several hundred years. But today, in the infinite realm, a nameless cultivator had actually managed to display one. Gonghai was so excited that he found it hard to keep calm. "I can't be impulsive. This person might have changed his appearance, but the truth is that he has a great background. If I were to kill such a person, I fear there would be a great calamity." He formed a law formula with his hands. A strange fluctuation swept over Chinyu, and then everything calmed down. Gonghai couldn't help but laugh. The immortal sect's secret detection technique could find any hidden marks within a cultivator's body. Since there weren't any, then this cultivator wasn't a disciple of any transcending influence. There was no need for him to have any scruples. It seemed that this boy had stumbled upon a great stroke of luck and had inadvertently obtained a secret rule art inheritance. But after today, this inheritance would be his. "Protector, this person has disrespected my immortal sect. Quickly seize him and punish him." With a loud shout, Gonghai took out a token and crushed it. Bang! Chapter 382. This was a life-saving treasure that the immortal sect bestowed upon all disciples that entered the infinite realm. After activating it, an enchantment would descend. Within this enchantment, the immortal sect cultivators would obtain an increase in strength, and all other life forms would be suppressed. Moreover, this enchantment also had an imprisoning effect. If there was a great danger, the immortal sect disciples could easily escape the scope of the enchantment. As for all other life forms, they would be imprisoned within. Even a blue sea level powerhouse would have to expend a great deal of effort to break free. This was Gonghai's greatest trump card, but he activated it without hesitation in order to ensure that nothing would go wrong. A chance to obtain a secret rule, art, was worth it for him to give it his all. Protector, if we can obtain a secret rule art, we can share it. Gonghai clenched his teeth and sent out a sound transmission. A protector didn't have the qualifications to struggle for any good fortune with the person they were protecting. Before entering the infinite realm, the immortal sect had already laid down a formidable spell to prevent any accidents from occurring. But Gonghai taking the initiative to share was different. This was something that the spell allowed. As expected, the immortal sect protector revealed a look of pleasant surprise. He said in a low voice, "Thank you." He looked up, and his eyes fell on Chinyu. "Kneel!" With a loud shout, the immortal sect protector took a step forwards. Brilliant golden light erupted from his body and condensed into an incomparably majestic phantom behind him. This phantom was only 1,000 feet tall, not even reaching the height of the several ancient trees in the distance. But it gave off a feeling as if it could support the heavens and earth. Bathed in this golden light, awe and submission rose up from the depths of one's soul. This is bad. This is the immortal sect's secret art, myriad submission. In the distance, a protector's complexion changed beside Suwenza. He flipped his hand and took out a lotus throne-shaped treasure. "You three, lend me a hand." The three protectors nodded. They each took a corner and lifted their hands, their strength surging outwards. With the combined strength of the four protectors, the lotus throne-shaped treasure suddenly erupted. A giant, translucent lotus phantom covered the group. The golden light was shielded outside. Even so, several juniors with weaker cultivations were still affected. They gasped for breath and sat down, resisting with all their strength. The immortal sect's secret technique, all things bowed, was famed throughout the land of divinity and demons. 10,000 years ago, there was a peerless powerhouse of the immortal sect who used this secret technique to instantly control all life in a large city. Over 1 trillion cultivators were reduced to puppets of this immortal sect powerhouse. That was because this secret art targeted the will of a cultivator. If a cultivator couldn't withstand it and lowered their head, they would be branded with a brand and become completely loyal to the user. Even if they were told to kill themselves, they wouldn't hesitate. Suwenza's complexion paled even further. He resisted the urge to worship in his soul. He forced a smile and said, "Miss Feng, this person doesn't seem the same as you described him to be." Feng Yunyan also found it difficult to resist. She revealed a bit of embarrassment and confusion filled her eyes. That timid and cowardly cultivator from the past. How could he have dared to fight with the immortal sect cultivators? Did he suffer some kind of shock and go crazy? Or had she misunderstood him from the very beginning? He shook his head. Thinking about these things was useless. After falling into the myriad submission mystic art, it was impossible for a divine soul cultivator to resist it. He would soon become a puppet and his life or death would no longer be in his hands. Gonghai's eyes widened in shock. The protector had actually hidden his strength so deeply that no one knew that he had already cultivated the myriad submission mystic art. It had to be known that amongst the numerous mystic arts of the immortal sect, besides a few that reached the peak, the myriad submission mystic art was the most powerful existence. He immediately understood that the protector had hidden his strength and was chosen to join the team of protectors in order to enter the infinite realm and obtain all sorts of lucky chances there. After all, with the terrifying myriad submission mystic art, as long as he didn't touch those danger zones, he was nearly an invincible existence in the infinite realm. Luckily, he had taken the initiative to share it with him. Otherwise, the protector would have had ways to force him to agree. But if that happened, the situation wouldn't have been too good. Gonghai secretly rejoiced. His shock soon turned into joy. The protector was so powerful that it would be easy for him to suppress this cultivator. As long as he was subdued by the myriad submission mystic art, he could easily obtain all of his secrets. The secret rules were within reach. Humph humph. You all despise me for being weak and abandon me outside, not allowing me to participate in obtaining good fortune. But I, Gong Hai, have an even greater lucky chance. Just you wait. When I rise in the future, I will definitely teach you a lesson. Gong Hai's heart became increasingly anxious. Don't resist. Hurry and submit. Within the golden light, Qin Yu was dripping with sweat. His body shivered, and he felt as if 100,000 mountains were pressing down on him. A voice kept repeating itself in his ears. Give up. As long as you kneel down, you will be freed. You will become a follower of the unsurpassed ruler and obtain his protection and blessings. This voice was extremely tempting. If it weren't for Qin Yu's firm will, he feared he would have already been convinced. He didn't know that what he was experiencing was the immortal sect's myriad submission mystic art. But his intuition told him that if he really knelt down, he would forever lose his freedom. Persist. I absolutely cannot lower my head. I can definitely do it. Qin Yu grit his teeth and struggled to stand up beneath the golden light. But this sort of resistance caused the golden light to instantly turn into raging flames. These raging flames didn't harm the mortal body or soul. Rather, they directly affected the level of a cultivator's will. Like a blunt knife scraping against bone, the more he persisted, the more painful it became. The immortal sect protector revealed a look of shock. This cultivator had an incredibly strong will. Even after falling into the myriad submission mystic art, he was still able to persist for so long. But it was useless. Humph! With a light cough, the immortal sect protector galvanized the mystic art with all of his strength. The dignified figure suddenly grew to 2,000 feet tall, and the golden light became increasingly rich. Within Qin Yu's soul space, Spirity's eyes revealed an icy cold light. She lifted a hand and pointed towards the void. Between the heavens and earth, the 2,000-foot dignified figure opened its eyes. Divine light erupted from them and thunder sparkled within them, seeming to contain a world-destroying might. A finger reached out from the void. It pierced through the layers of divine light and crushed apart the endless thunder before falling between the figure's eyebrows. The dignified figure emitted an angry roar that no cultivator could hear. I will definitely find you. Bang! The figure disintegrated and all of the golden light vanished. Spirity paled and her eyes dimmed with exhaustion. She took a step back and vanished from sight. The immortal sect protector cried out miserably. He fell to the ground and wildly rolled about. Black blood flowed out from between his eyebrows, and he instantly aged. The myriad submission mystic art was terrifyingly powerful, but once it was unraveled, the backlash was equally terrifying. Gong Hai was dumbfounded. Just as he was about to succeed with his secret rule art, the protector had fallen to such a state. Just what had happened? Suddenly, his heart trembled. He looked up to see a pair of icy cold eyes staring at him. This is bad. This cultivator is too strange, and he might have other methods. I am not his match. Run. Gong Hai grabbed onto the immortal sect protector. Golden light ignited on the surface of his body, and his speed reached unimaginable levels. He instantly rushed out of the enchantment and fled without looking back. He ran away. Su Wanzi mumbled, his face filled with shock. Feng Yunyun also had a dazed expression. As she looked at Qin Yu, her eyes became incomparably complex. This was the person she thought to be as timid as a mouse. How laughable! Her other companions and Bao Kuo's 5 protectors were also shocked, speechless. Qin Yu took a deep breath and barely suppressed the killing intent in his heart. Not to mention whether or not he could break through the enchantment. Even if he did chase after them and kill the immortal sect cultivator, that would be an unwise decision. Although he wasn't weak right now, in front of the transcendent immortal sect, he was still as weak as an ant. They could send him beyond redemption with just a single thought. But he had already firmly remembered these two immortal sect cultivators. Once he was strong enough in the future, it wouldn't be too late to deal with them then. Chinyu sat down cross-legged. A bit of doubt rose in his heart. Just what happened just now? The supernatural powers of the immortal sect protector had actually been forcefully interrupted. There was definitely something he didn't know about. Chinyu's thoughts rapidly transmitted. He tried to send a sound transmission to Zhao's soul, but he didn't obtain a response. This caused Chinyu to subconsciously form some guesses. But he wasn't in a hurry. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes, restoring his exhausted mind. In the distance, Feng Yunyun and the others who had been watching Chinyu relaxed. They had been worried that Chinyu would vent his anger on them. A moment later, the enchantment strength was exhausted and it quietly shattered. Chinyu stood up, howling into the distance. Suwen's aside. A master. No wonder he looked down on us before. Feng Yunyun lowered her head. She subconsciously bit her lips, her face pale. Protectorly coughed. Miss Feng, there is no need to worry. This fellow Taoist was hiding his strength. Even I wasn't able to see through it, much less you. But, strictly speaking, you and I both owe him a favor today. To dare to fight with someone from the immortal sect and break through that protector's myriad submission secret art, I admire him greatly. I will also acknowledge this favor. Su Wenzi smiled. We can't compare with the immortal sect, but if there's a chance in the future, we will repay him as much as we can. Qin Yu's complexion darkened as he flew at a low altitude. It wasn't easy to find an immortal sect cultivator, but who would have thought this would be the result? Did he really not have a chance to find Ning Ling in the Infinite Realm? In the blink of an eye, another month passed. The Infinite Realm had been open for nearly half the time. Of the cultivators that entered this space, as long as they survived, most of them obtained harvests. Of course, there were also many people that died on the spot, becoming corpses, rotting into skeletons, or becoming food for monster beasts. At this time, in the distant depths of the Infinite Realm, on a lake island that didn't exist on the map, there were over 100 cultivators facing each other. On one side, divine light shined like a great sun. It sprinkled down 1 trillion rays of light, as if all evil and sin would be purified. On the other side, black clouds wove together above their heads. From time to time, demon phantoms would condense, opening their bloody mouths and roaring. Both sides were incomparably strong. As their invisible auras collided, the entire lake surged. Through the billowing waves, one could faintly make out a palace at the bottom of the lake. On the withered yellow grass, Qin Yu clenched his fist and punched out. Across from him was a native life form. Its appearance was nearly the same as a human's, but its body was 20 feet tall. Only its key areas were wrapped in beast skin, and its naked body seemed as if it were cast from steel. At a glance, one could tell that it was incomparably powerful. The native life form didn't resist this punch at all. It roared and punched out. Bang, bang. 2 dull thumping sounds erupted at the same time. Qin Yu coughed, and blood tumbled in his chest. Just now he had clearly heard his chest bones creak. A king-step demon body was said to have the strength to kill an ordinary divine soul with just their mortal body. From this, one could see just how powerful it was. Yet, this native life form's bones creaked with a single punch. The strength of this native was truly terrifying. Chapter 383. Qin Yu revealed a helpless expression. This sort of thick-skinned blood cow was the most troublesome to deal with. Unless one dealt a heavy blow, it was impossible to injure them. But these native life forms had a special blood energy. Once they were killed, they would be entangled by this blood energy. At that time, if one ran into another native, they would be relentlessly hunted down. In addition, these natives didn't cultivate magic power and didn't understand the rules. Besides their powerful mortal bodies, they had nothing else. If one killed them, they wouldn't obtain any rewards. Instead, they would provoke a whole host of troubles. Thus, cultivators that entered the Infinite Realm weren't willing to kill unless they had no other choice. Chinyu stepped forwards, the strength of the demon body erupting. With a loud bang, the earth instantly caved in and countless cracks spread out. The native's pupils shrank, and he revealed a dignified expression. But he wasn't scared away like the other natives he had encountered before. Instead, he began to stutter. "You are very strong. Brave warrior. Tuba, challenge you." As he finished speaking, he fell to his knees, a pious expression on his face as he began to recite short and strange syllables. As these syllables fell into the ears, they caused one's throat to dry up and their heartbeat to accelerate. Chinyu revealed a shocked expression. This was because at this time, the body of the native that was kneeling on the ground was undergoing a terrifying change. With loud, crackling sounds, the native's mortal body grew to nearly 30 feet tall. Every muscle bulged out and blue veins bulged out, thick and fierce. Who? Every breath he took stirred up a gust of wind. Dong, dong. The beating heart in his chest was like the beating of a drum. As the last syllable fell, the transformed native stood up from the ground and roared into the heavens. Bang! An impact visible to the naked eye swept through the surroundings. Endless withered grass was twisted apart, and the ground shook. Chinyu's complexion changed. Flesh and blood domain. When his demon body reached the king's step, he had obtained a great deal of information. One of them was related to the flesh and blood domain. This was a battle zone that was naturally formed when a body transformation cultivator's mortal body reached the limit. In this area, a body transformation cultivator's combat strength would be greatly increased. They wouldn't feel pain, and their recovery speed would be faster. But according to what Chinyu knew, only when the demon body reached the sovereign step would it be possible to form a flesh and blood domain. Although this native's aura was terrifying, it was far from reaching the sovereign step demon body. Otherwise, all he could do right now was run as far away as he could. Bang! The ground began to tremble and collapse. Mud and stone flew in all directions. The native creatures rushed over, their speed increasing by several times. Chinyu didn't dare to be careless. The strength of his demon body erupted as he thrust out his palm. Like two mountains colliding, a terrifying echo echoed through the air. Chinyu was forced back again and again, each step leaving behind ankle-deep footprints in the withered grass. Wild strength surged out like a tide, crashing into him in waves. Chinyu could hear the sound of his flesh and blood breaking apart. On the sixth step, Chinyu forcefully stopped. He took a deep breath, and the damaged parts of his body began to rapidly regenerate, restoring him to his original state. As expected, although this native had formed a flesh and blood domain, it was far from reaching the level of a sovereign step demon body. Even so, this native's mortal body was inconceivably strong. Even though Chinyu erupted with the strength of 100 dragons, he was still at a slight disadvantage. Delightful. You have to be careful. Different from the native's stuttering voice, his attacks were swift and powerful. He was like a cheetah on the prairie, every strike carrying a fatal threat. Ka-cha, ka-cha. As the two fought with all their strength, space began to collapse. Giant cracks spread out in all directions. In the skies above, black clouds rapidly appeared. Lightning snakes wildly jumped about, emitting loud, rumbling roars. After another collision, both sides were sent flying backwards. They crashed into the ground, creating two terrifying craters. The native at the bottom of the crater didn't attack again. Instead, he smiled. "You're very strong. I admire you." He frowned, as if he didn't know what to say. "You, with my tribe? Let's have a good competition." As he finished speaking, he looked up at the black clouds that appeared above his head, a trace of fear and helplessness in his eyes. The native life forms also knew of the obliteration of the infinite realm's rules. Most of them suppressed their strength and didn't dare to break through to a higher boundary. Once they grew to a degree where they posed too much of a threat, they would be mercilessly killed by the rules. From this point of view, the truth was that the native life forms were a group of pitiful people. Yu let out a breath of relief. He flicked his sore wrist. Forget it. I'm not going to your tribe. Although this native life form was the strongest one Yu had ever encountered, who knew how many powerful warriors were hidden in his tribe. He didn't want to make things difficult for himself. The native life form had an ugly complexion, but he knew that he couldn't do anything to Yu. He looked deeply at Yu, and his body rapidly returned to normal. Then, he turned and ran away. With loud rumbling sounds, he was simply a vicious beast in human form. Yu looked up at the rapidly dissipating black clouds above his head. His eyes flashed. He had already discovered that the infinite realm had a certain degree of tolerance towards strength that exceeded its limits. As long as the space itself wasn't harmed, it wouldn't truly obliterate it. Perhaps this was because the rules of the infinite realm didn't want to waste its own strength. Of course, this tolerance had its limits. For instance, in the Battle of Bronze Bell Ancient City, when Granny Scholatry fought with the evil spirit, the infinite realm had immediately obliterated it. If his guess wasn't wrong, then the infinite realm's rules were incomparably weak. Perhaps it wouldn't be able to last much longer before it completely collapsed. If the rules collapsed, then this spatial fragment would also be thoroughly destroyed. At that time, all the natives and monster beasts would die. Yu shook his head. These weren't things he could interfere with. His feet moved, and he rapidly flew away. Soon, another month passed. Although the infinite realm could remain open for a maximum of a year, most of the time it would close in advance. A conservative estimate was that there were only 4 months left until it closed. Yu didn't encounter another immortal sect cultivator. He felt helpless and didn't have much hope of finding Ningling. It was just that as he thought about how it was likely that the two of them were in the same spatial fragment and couldn't find each other, he felt a bit depressed. However, he did have many harvests during this month. For instance, in his storage ring, there was a heavily corroded bell that even had many holes in it. This was something Yu had obtained from the remains of a cultivator. Looking at the integrity of the skeleton, it shouldn't have been torn apart by monster beasts after death. But where the remains were found, there were many monster beasts. This was abnormal. It had to be known that because a cultivator's mortal body was washed in the spiritual strength of the heavens and earth, their flesh and blood contained a massive amount of spiritual strength. To monster beasts, this was the best tonic. Those that entered the infinite realm were at least at the divine soul realm. A divine soul corpse was an unbearable temptation to monster beasts. There could be many reasons why the monster beasts didn't touch the corpse, but Yu felt that it might be related to this broken bell. He bent down, and a sword light flashed from his fingertips. It instantly sank into the soil and dug out the entire black mountain ginseng along with all its roots before placing it in his storage ring. This sort of black mountain ginseng contained boundless spiritual strength of the heavens and earth. It could be directly refined and absorbed to rapidly increase one's magic power. It was a good cultivation resource. At this time, Yu's complexion changed. His palm flashed with a light. Although there was clearly nothing there, he could see that the flesh and blood of his palm were flat, as if there was something extra there. This object was the half-disc that couldn't be seen or sensed with divine sense, but it truly existed. Now, this half-disc emitted a faint trace of heat, as if it were guiding something. Yu revealed a look of hesitation. But as he thought about the mysteries of this half-disc, he finally made a decision. Since he couldn't find Ningling, he would work hard to obtain lucky chances in the infinite realm. Shua. Yu's figure rapidly moved. Sometimes to the left, sometimes to the right, sometimes to the front, sometimes to the back. His speed was so fast that he left behind afterimages. But soon, all of these afterimages vanished from sight. He stopped and his eyes brightened. This direction. Whoosh, Yu hurried forwards. Sure enough, the heat emitted by the disc became increasingly strong as he moved forwards. He crossed over tall mountains and crossed long rivers. The distance he traveled was far beyond his expectations. Moreover, he didn't know if it was a coincidence or some other reason, but he didn't encounter any dangers along the way. Yes, Not even a single monster beast appeared to block his path. This was simply unbelievable. The Infinite Realm was known as a place where if a stone were to fall from the heavens, at least 3 monster beasts would die. Qin Yu revealed a strange expression. He stared at the half-disc that he couldn't see in his hand. Could this be its function? If it could even accomplish such an unimaginable feat, then its origins likely surpassed his imagination. This caused Qin Yu to be extremely curious. Just what was it that the half-disc could sense? He leapt up and landed on an ancient tree that supported the heavens. His eyes pierced through the layers of branches and looked towards the distant earth. A canyon appeared in his line of sight. The two sides crisscrossed as if they had been torn apart. It was several hundred miles wide and so long that he couldn't see where it ended. The surface of the canyon was incomparably desolate. There wasn't a single plant growing here, and the bare stone had been through the passage of time. Large cracks had appeared all over it. The thing that had reacted to the half-disc was in this canyon. Qin Yu carefully swept his eyes around. There was nothing in the canyon. Strong winds howled as they stirred up sand, causing his line of sight to dim and blur. On the surface, there didn't seem to be anything wrong. It was just an astonishingly large and incomparably barren canyon. But after his previous experience of obtaining the half-disc, Qin Yu didn't dare to believe his own eyes and senses. He stepped forwards, and his figure rose several times. Soon, he was 1,000 feet away from the entrance of the canyon. With a flick of his sleeves, he tossed out a stone that was half the size of a person. He stared at it intently as the stone fell into the canyon, smashing a deep hole in the sand and burying half of it. There was no problem. Qin Yu's complexion didn't relax at all. He lifted a hand and grabbed a second stone, throwing it even further away. He stared at the stone. As it flew into the canyon, ripples appeared in space and swallowed it up. There really was a problem. Qin Yu's pupils shrank. He rapidly retreated. Even though he knew that the half-disc was extraordinary and that what it sensed might be some great good fortune, he didn't hesitate at all. The reason he was able to obtain the half-disc alive was because of luck. If he had to do it again, he would absolutely die without a doubt. Lucky chances and good fortune were good, but one needed to be alive to enjoy them. Qin Yu reacted quickly. The moment the stone disappeared, he had already retreated. Not too far away, there was a shadow behind him. As long as he stepped into it, he could immediately use shadow step to escape. But this time, Qin Yu's complexion changed. He came to a sudden stop. To his horror, he discovered that even though he was retreating, the distance between him and the canyon was constantly shrinking. Chapter 384. His eyes flashed, and his focus was restored. Qin Yu saw a pair of angry eyes glaring at him, a look of annoyance on his face. Looking at the blue marks on his face that hadn't faded yet, as well as the familiar large stone on the ground, it wasn't hard to guess what had happened just now. Qin Yu revealed an awkward expression. He cupped his hands together towards the native cultivator and said, "I accidentally injured you. I really apologize." He swept his eyes around. The giant canyon was filled with lush vegetation, and the spiritual strength in the air was clearly much richer than outside. There were even white clouds and blue skies above his head. There were massive stone and wood buildings that extended into the depths of the canyon. There were so many that it was impossible to count, and countless native life forms lived here. This was clearly the interior of the canyon. The only thing that comforted Qin Yu was that this wasn't a danger zone, but a large native life form tribe. But as he thought about how he had fallen here despite being extremely careful, he couldn't help but feel a bit helpless. "Humph!" The unlucky native who had been struck by a stone roared out in anger. He was incomparably angry, but besides the first word, Qin Yu didn't understand anything else. But in this situation, he didn't need to be an idiot to know that these words weren't good. Qin Yu could only express his apologies again and again. Suddenly, another native cultivator opened his mouth and began to blabber on. The roaring native was stunned for a moment before he shut his mouth, as if he knew that no matter how much he said, Qin Yu wouldn't be able to understand him. "Human outsider, I am the brave warrior of the Titan race, Tuzin. This native was actually able to communicate. Although his voice was a bit strange, his words were smooth. It was good that they could communicate. What Qin Yu feared was that they wouldn't be able to communicate and they would only be able to argue with each other. He didn't fear anyone in the infinite realm, but in this tribe, he could be beaten up by hundreds of strong fellows at any moment. The psychological pressure was great. Warrior Tuzin, how are you? My name is Qin Yu, and I unintentionally intruded into your tribe. If possible, please allow me to leave. Tuzin's eyes were cold. Human outsider, tell me, just what did you rely on to find my tribe? Qin Yu's heart chilled. His intuition told him that he absolutely couldn't reveal any information about the half-disc. He said with a blank expression, I inadvertently came here because I felt that the canyon was unusual, so I decided to give it a try. I didn't know your tribe was here. The last sentence was true. In addition to Qin Yu's sincerity, although Tuzin had some doubts, he still believed most of it. That was because their tribe was the best hidden in the entire broken world. This was the best proof of their long period of peace. But today, it just happened to be the most important day of the tribe, and yet two groups of human outsiders had arrived. This was just too much of a coincidence. Although Tuzin hadn't had any dealings with human outsiders, he had heard from other tribes that they were all incomparably despicable and cruel. According to his temperament, it would be best if he killed this human to prevent the tribe's location from being revealed. But now, the will of the totem could not be disobeyed. Even if he was the strongest warrior in the tribe, he did not dare to violate it. Human outsider, consider yourself lucky. Come with me. Tuzin turned and walked deeper into the tribe, a cold smile on his face. Although he couldn't kill him, this human outsider had an incomparably weak mortal body. It was simply impossible for him to withstand the test of the totem. At that time, he would still become food for the fish. Qin Yu was stunned. He wanted to say, Can I exchange my good luck for a chance to leave? But as he swept his eyes around, he saw several ridiculously strong native life forms glaring at him like tigers watching their prey. He rationally swallowed his words. At the very least, they hadn't directly attacked, so this wasn't the worst possible situation. Moreover, looking at Tuzin's intentions, it didn't seem as if he wanted to attack. Otherwise, he only needed to shout, and even if Qin Yu had 3 heads and 6 arms, he still wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being beaten to a pulp. Since he had come, he might as well follow him to see just what was going on. The place he had been at just now could only be considered a sentry post at the entrance to the tribe. This was the true entrance to the tribe. Although it was called the entrance, there was no one guarding it. Who would dare to come here and cause trouble? Tuzin's legs were long, and his feet were fast. Every step he took caused the ground to shake. Without pausing, he entered the tribe. Qin Yu didn't slow. Although his steps didn't seem fast, he easily followed behind. But the moment he stepped into the tribe, his complexion changed. His pupils shrank, and he revealed a look of shock. The native life forms didn't cultivate magic power, and they didn't comprehend the rules, so they didn't conceal their auras. The moment Qin Yu stepped into the tribe, he immediately sensed 13 terrifying blood energy fluctuations. The weakest of them gave off a feeling like that of an ancient vicious beast. As for the strongest one, Qin Yu subconsciously looked up at the canyon walls. There was a cave that had been cut into the canyon walls. The blood energy fluctuations inside were unimaginably strong, dozens or even hundreds of times stronger than his king step demon body. He feared that the native life forms inside could easily grind him to pieces with a single finger. Body cultivators only had a single method of attack, and their methods were crude. But as long as they occupied the upper hand, they would often become the nightmare of their enemies. Any method they used would collapse beneath their iron fists. They could only bitterly resist the barrage of attacks until they died. Moreover, when these native life forms fought against Qin Yu, it wasn't as simple as just occupying the upper hand, but absolutely crushing him. Tuzin turned his head and coldly glared at Qin Yu, his eyes full of warning. He wasn't surprised that Qin Yu was able to discover the great priest position. After all, these human outsiders always had all sorts of methods. This was also good. With the deterrence of the great priest's aura, even that fierce boy from the group of human outsiders who had arrived first was scared to the point of not daring to move. This person naturally didn't dare to play any tricks. And indeed, as they walked along the road, the human boy behind them became much more well-behaved. Although the tribesman pointed at him, he lowered his head and pretended not to hear anything. Tuzin revealed a smug look, but it immediately dimmed. Even someone as powerful as the great priest could only hide in the tribe. If so, just where would the future of their Titan race be? Thinking of this, Tuzin's complexion became increasingly ugly and an icy cold aura erupted from his body. Xinyu frowned. He didn't know what was going on with this big fellow who had been so smug just a moment ago. Luckily, he remained silent, and Tuzin didn't have a chance to vent his anger on him. The Titan tribe was extremely large, and the place they were going to seem to have to pass through the entire tribe. Xinyu lowered his head, but his eyes swept around, seeing through the entire tribe. Behind him, there was a group of Titan children, all of them curious and playful as they followed behind Xinyu. Although they were children, they were already around his height. As they pushed and shoved, the ground trembled. From this, it could be seen that each and every one of these young-looking children could tear apart tigers and leopards. Although the Titan race only cultivated their physical bodies, their strength was truly terrifying. Suddenly, Tuzin stopped. He turned and angrily shouted, "You little brats, hurry up and get the hell out of here. If you follow me again, I'll give you 12 stone cudgels each." Bang! The Titan children revealed looks of fear. They turned and fled without a trace. Tuzin looked at Xinyu and coldly snorted. He continued to lead the way, but after a moment, he stopped. A great lake appeared in front of them. What was startling was that the water in this lake was black, as thick as ink. Currently, the banks of the lake were filled with adult Titan men and women. Many of them had already entered the lake and were desperately swimming towards an island at the center. The Titan race had powerful mortal bodies, and every movement they made contained the strength of 10,000 caddies. But the Titan men and women in the lake seemed to be straining themselves. Every time they splashed the water, it was difficult. It was as if the black water in this lake was unusually heavy. "Tuzin, how come there's another human outsider? Did he land just now?" A Titan who was sitting on the lakeside asked, gasping for breath. Tuzin said, "He just broke in." These words left many Titans surprised. But since the great priest didn't warn them, there shouldn't be any problems. Soon, they all relaxed. Many bell-like eyes looked at Xinyu. This boy is incomparably thin, and his aura is even weaker. If he enters Lord Totem's lake, all that awaits him is death. Humph humph, these human outsiders all have weak mortal bodies. Even if they are lucky enough to catch up to today's grand event, they can't change their fate. Hurry up and toss him down. Let's watch the fun. Although Xinyu didn't understand what these Titans were saying, their playful, mocking, and indifferent gazes caused his heart to sink. Tuzin coldly said, "Human outsider, you intruded into our tribe, so by right you should be killed. But you ran into the day when Lord Totem opens the sacred lake. We will abide by Lord Totem's will that any life form can enter the sacred lake, so we will give you a chance to live. As long as you can step onto the island at the center of the lake, you can live. But remember, if you cannot withstand it, all that awaits you is death. Now go down." Xinyu's complexion was ugly, but without much hesitation, he took a deep breath and jumped into the lake. He had no other choice. Since this was the case, he might as well be straightforward. Put on, there was a dull thumping sound, but there was almost no splash. A terrifying weight came from all directions, firmly pressing down on Xinyu. His complexion immediately changed. Every single drop of the Black Lake water weighed 500 kilograms. Falling into it felt like a mountain was pressing down on one's body. If he didn't want to sink to the bottom of the lake, he could only struggle to move his hands and feet. But every movement was extremely difficult. Xinyu finally understood why these Titans found it so difficult to swim in the lake water. And what was most terrifying was that in this lake water, magic power was imprisoned and even soul force couldn't be used. All he could rely on was the strength of his mortal body. Chinyu looked down into the depths of the lake. Although it was pitch black, he could still see black shadows rapidly shuttling through. Although he didn't know what these black shadows were, Chinyu believed that they wouldn't be pleasant answers. If it were any other divine soul cultivator that fell into the black lake water, they might only be able to last for a moment before being swallowed up by it. But Chinyu was different. He had a king-step demon body. In terms of pure mortal body strength, he was similarly fierce and formidable. So soon, he slapped the black lake water and stabilized his body. This result clearly surpassed the expectations of the Titans on the shore. Their faces revealed looks of shock. But Chinyu didn't have any thoughts of looking at their expressions. He used his hands and feet to rush towards the center of the lake. Tuzin had clearly said that unless he reached the island at the center of the lake, all that awaited him was death. The strength of the demon body was limited. He had to cherish every ounce of strength he had in order to succeed. At this time, the advantage of Chinyu's small body was displayed. Compared to the Titans, the pressure he had to withstand was much less. Moreover, his speed was relatively faster as he soared towards the island at the center of the lake. Tuzin, this human outsider, seems to come from a body refinement background. A Titan asked with a worried expression. Tuzin sneered. Even if he comes from a body refinement background, it is impossible for him to reach the island at the center of the lake. Only the strongest warriors of our Titan race can accomplish this. That's right. He will soon learn that the sacred lake opened by the totem is not as simple as he thinks it is. Chapter 385. Chinyu didn't know whether or not he would become food for the fish that the native life forms were anticipating. All he knew was that he was exhausted. Ever since he obtained the demon body, he rarely felt this way. His hands and feet felt as if they were covered with stones and tossed into an astonishingly sticky swamp. Every movement required all his strength. His arms, waist, thighs, ankles, every inch of his muscles, bones, and flesh was incomparably sore. He gasped for breath like a broken bellows. As for the island at the center of the lake, it was still far away. Even though he had swum for so long, he hadn't been able to approach it at all. Suddenly, an undercurrent rushed up from beneath the lake. Chinyu stuffily coughed, and his body was instantly swept up and pulled underwater. It was like a mountain was pressing down on his chest. In the pitch-black darkness, there was a stifling feeling that made one instinctively feel fear. Chinyu struggled to stabilize his body. His hands and feet thrashed about, and after several breaths of time, he finally broke free from the undercurrent. His feet felt cold as if he had kicked something. Then, a stabbing pain spread through his body, and a faint blood-red color floated up in the darkness. The smell of blood spread through the black lake water. The fish that were hidden in the depths of the lake began to swim over in excitement. The entire lake violently tumbled about as if it were boiling. Many of the native life forms in the water cried out in alarm and hurriedly retreated, not daring to approach this area. Although they had blood energy protecting their bodies, if they weren't careful and were entangled by the fish, it was possible that they would be gnawed to bones. Beside the lake, Tuzin laughed. I told you that it was impossible for him to reach the island. He couldn't even last half the distance. How about it? He had a smug expression. The surrounding Titans also laughed happily. Although they didn't know why the totem allowed all life forms to have the qualifications to enter the sacred lake, in the eyes of the Titans, the sacred lake was a lucky chance that belonged exclusively to them. If this human outsider died, they would only be happy. But at this time, the tumbling water surface suddenly broke apart. Chinyu stuck his head out, gasping for breath as he used his hands and feet to resist the pressure in the water. His face was pale, and there was fear in his eyes. Although he didn't know what he had stepped on just now, there was no doubt that it was a vicious creature. In just a single step, a long gash had been torn open in his foot. Moreover, this creature's teeth must have carried some sort of poison. The area around his wound was numb, and he couldn't feel anything at all. Even the healing speed of his wound had slowed down, and blood constantly seeped out. Because of this, a large number of ferocious underwater creatures were attracted over, resulting in the current situation. Fortunately, these ferocious creatures were suppressed by some kind of power in the depths of the lake. Otherwise, if they were allowed to swim up, everyone in the lake would die. Chinyu tried his best to float on the surface of the boiling water. At the same time, he galvanized his blood vitality, slowly expelling the toxins from his body along with his blood. The wound gradually felt pain, followed by a slight itch. The flesh wriggled and grew back together. The smell of blood gradually vanished, and the surface of the water became calm once more. Chinyu let out a long breath, his taut heart relaxing a little. The surface of the water was tumbling, and it was even more difficult to deal with underwater. If this continued, he wouldn't be able to hold on for long. He looked up at the island at the center of the lake. Then, he clenched his teeth and swam forwards a little at a time. On the shore, Tuzin's lips twitched and his complexion paled. Those words just now were still echoing in his ears. This was truly a resounding slap to his face. Humph! Even if you escape this calamity, it's absolutely impossible for you to reach Lake Hard Island. You haven't encountered the real difficulties yet. Chinyu swam forwards with all his strength. He actually overtook many native life forms. These large fellows with incomparably powerful mortal bodies revealed strange expressions as they saw a human outsider even fiercer than them. There were also many native life forms that were originally beating the drums of retreat. With a loud roar, their hands and feet wildly swam forwards, overtaking Chinyu in a single move. Human outsider, you are far worse than us. You want to reach Lake Hard Island? Keep on dreaming. The native life form roared out loud. In the lake and on the shore, many titans loudly cheered. Unfortunately, Chinyu didn't understand what they were saying. Even if he did, he wouldn't care. Right now, every bit of strength was incomparably precious. He didn't even want to waste the strength to turn his head or say a single word. Floating in the black lake water was a vine that was over a dozen meters long. It had broad and massive leaves that emitted a faint green light. It was actually able to counteract the pressure of the lake water. Vine tendrils stretched out, wrapping around 7 cultivators so that they wouldn't sink to the bottom of the lake. But the buoyancy of the vine was limited. Even with the vine tendrils pulling them, they still needed to constantly beat against the lake water in order to barely maintain their floating state. The source of this vine was a dignified young cultivator. Countless roots tightly wrapped around him, constantly absorbing the strength of his blood vitality to resist the pressure of the lake water. The cheers of the titans echoed out from afar. The young cultivator opened his eyes. They were dim and weary, and he struggled to look up. Suddenly, his complexion changed, and he revealed a happy expression. Chinyu! A weak shout mixed with excitement suddenly entered Chinyu's ears. As Chinyu was rushing towards Lake Hard Island, he suddenly froze. He looked up at the source of the voice and immediately recognized who it was. Tianyun. It was the captain who had helped him join the beast hunting battalion in the southern Overwatch Pass and help him avoid the Yu family's pursuit. Chinyu already knew that there were several other human cultivators before him who had inadvertently entered the Titan tribe and been thrown into the sacred lake. But he never imagined that he would be one of them. Soon, surprise filled Chinyu's eyes once more. He saw the green vines floating in the lake, as well as the other cultivators struggling to survive. There was actually an old friend amongst them. Xiong Yuana originally had a happy expression like everyone else. Since this person was someone Tianya knew and also had the ability to swim in the sacred lake, perhaps he had the ability to save them. But when she saw Chinyu's figure, all the blood drained from her face. She was so frightened that she nearly forgot to move her hands and feet. It was only when she sank into the lake that she managed to emerge. It was him. It was actually him. Wasn't it said that once a devil apostle began to transform into a devil, they would lose all reason and eventually self-destruct? How could he still be alive? Moreover, She couldn't see any signs of him transforming into a devil. Xiangyuan's mind was in chaos. She desperately lowered her head, afraid that Qin would see her. But very quickly, she felt a gaze fall on her. It was over, it was over. If he saw me, he would definitely kill me to silence me. Xiangyuan's eyes filled with despair. It's really you? Tianyin was pleasantly surprised. Qin, I can barely keep the green vines afloat. Please help us and send us to the island at the center of the lake. Qin swept his eyes around and furrowed his eyebrows. This green vine was already pushing them to its limit. In addition, he was about to sink into the water. If he couldn't borrow strength from the green vine, then if he wanted to carry it forward, the amount of strength he would consume would increase. Soon, Qin came to a conclusion. There was no way he could bring them to the island at the center of the lake. If he really tried to help them, they would all die together. Tianyin had shown graciousness to him, so he naturally couldn't stand by and watch them die. Now, the only thing he could do was to reach the island and think of a way to save them. Qin looked away. His arms and legs slapped against the lake water as he continued to rush towards the island. His speed was a bit faster than before. He could see that Tianyin and the others had lost a great deal of their strength. They likely wouldn't be able to last much longer. Fuck, he actually left like this. Bastard, for better or worse we are all humans, and Tianyin knows him. How could he be so heartless? Even if he couldn't save us, he should have at least said a few words. How could he just leave like this? How hateful. The cultivators that relied on the green vine to struggle for survival all began to angrily curse. Tianyin bitterly smiled and shook his head. This Titan race's sacred lake was far too terrifying. It was already difficult enough for Qin to protect himself, so how could he possibly save them? But even though he thought this, Tianyin still felt a bit uncomfortable. It had to be known that in a way, he had saved Qin life. Even if he couldn't save me, there is no need for him to be so cold and heartless, right? Only Xiangyuan relaxed as she saw Qin leave. She even felt a bit happy. She swept her eyes around and saw all the cultivators cursing at her. She sneered inwardly. What a bunch of idiots. If Qin had come here, you would have been the ones to die. Qin heard the curses coming from behind him. He bitterly smiled, but didn't explain. He had to conserve every bit of his strength in order to have a chance to reach the island at the center of the lake. Taking advantage of a gap in his movements, Qin looked up at the island at the center of the lake. His heart skipped a beat, and his complexion became extremely ugly. This lake didn't seem too large, and he had already swum for some time. Even if his speed wasn't fast, he should have at least covered half the distance. But looking at it now, the island at the center of the lake was still as far away as before. It hadn't changed at all from when he stood at the edge of the lake. Although the black lake water was terrifying, he could still overcome it. What truly left him in despair was that he couldn't see any hope of survival. Although he still had some strength left, his mortal body was exhausted. If he was optimistic, he estimated that he could only last for another hour. If he still couldn't reach the island at the center of the lake, then the consequences. Qin clenched his teeth. He suppressed the anger and fear in his heart and slapped the lake water. Human outsider, the brave warriors of our giant tribe will never lose to you. You think you can reach the island at the center of the lake? Keep on dreaming. Titan warriors, we are the true believers of the totem. How can we be defeated by a human outsider? We must rush to the island at the center of the lake. Rush! The 6 Titans roared. They struggled forwards in the black lake water, their eyes red, and they were doing their best. Qin listened to their roars. Although he didn't understand what they were saying, he still felt a bit comforted. At least these Titans were still soaking in the lake water like him, and their positions weren't too different. In other words, he hadn't fallen into a hopeless situation where he couldn't escape. This was still within the scope of the so-called test of the totem. As long as he persisted, there would surely be a chance of survival. He didn't believe that he would be dragged to death by a lake. Suddenly, there was a cry of alarm. A Titan warrior not too far away suddenly sank into the lake. Following that, another female Titan also roared out and vanished from sight. Undercurrent. Qin Yu's complexion changed. He only had time to tense his body before he was swept up by a terrifying current, and his field of vision fell into darkness. This undercurrent was even more terrifying than the one Qin Yu encountered just now. Moreover, what left him in despair was that there was more than one undercurrent. Beneath the seemingly tranquil surface of the lake, it suddenly turned into a tyrant. Undercurrents roared and roared, fusing together or colliding with each other, stirring up the heavens and earth. Qin Yu was forcefully wrapped up within. He felt dizzy and disoriented. Suddenly, an undercurrent attacked him, colliding with the undercurrent that wrapped around him. Qin Yu felt as if he had been struck by a mountain. His chest tightened, and there was the sound of bones breaking. Chapter 386. He was already struggling in the terrifying undercurrent, and his sternum had been shattered. Even the slightest movement left him in excruciating pain, and his mortal body's strength greatly weakened. Qin Yu couldn't break free. He could only curl up and protect his vital points, allowing the undercurrent to push him forwards. Suddenly, pained roars passed through the lake water and entered his ears. Qin Yu widened his eyes. His amazing eyesight was in full effect at this time. He could faintly see that 100 feet away, a titan was surrounded by several strange fish. These strange fish were extremely fast, and he could only see their blurry figures. But every time they approached, they would tear apart a massive chunk of flesh. Blood wildly gushed out, causing the black lake water to become even darker. The titan crazily struggled, erupting with a terrifying mortal body strength as he tried to float to the surface and escape from the strange fish's bite. But the strength of the undercurrent was far too terrifying. In addition to the interference of the strange fish, he had many chances to rush out, but in the end he failed. Qin Yu's complexion changed. He could already see far away in the tumbling lake water a series of black shadows rapidly breaking through the surface. The titan also seemed to feel the approaching danger. He roared out loud, and his body grew 10 feet in the air. He punched out his fist. The black lake water exploded, forming a giant splash that pushed his body upwards. He broke free from the strange fish, his hands and feet wildly slapping outwards. Unexpectedly, before the school of strange fish reached him, he managed to rush out. The school of strange fish that followed the scent of blood actually emitted angry screams. Qin Yu frowned as he heard this, but soon his complexion changed. This was because some strange fish were wrapped up in the undercurrent and were rushing towards him. Damn it! Qin Yu punched out his fist. His arm groaned and shattered. He forcefully collided with the undercurrent, causing it to slightly change its trajectory. It was this change that allowed him to brush past the terrifying fish. At their closest, they were less than 10 feet apart. Luckily, these strange fish's vision had completely deteriorated. Qin Yu restrained his aura and was able to dodge them. But at this time, a pitiful cry sounded out from behind him. Qin Yu turned his head and saw a slightly smaller titan fall into the school of strange fish. It was the female titan that had been dragged into the water by the undercurrent. It was clear that she was the same as Qin Yu just now. Unfortunately, while Qin Yu had escaped, she had been discovered by the school of strange fish. Terrifying flowers of blood quickly blossomed at the bottom of the lake, and a large portion of the lake water turned dark red. More and more strange fish were stimulated and rushed over. In just a few breaths of time, the female titan could no longer be seen. She was completely surrounded by strange fish. Her pitiful screams quickly weakened and eventually disappeared. Dead. Qin Yu's pupils shrank. He didn't have time to sympathize with her, because his current situation was similarly dangerous. This female titan had attracted a massive number of strange fish at the bottom of the lake. All of them were crazily devouring and fighting over her flesh. But as soon as they finished eating, they would disperse once more. He had to hide further away or float to the surface of the water in order to avoid them. Otherwise, in his current heavily injured state, once he was discovered by the strange fish faster, Yu didn't care about the excruciating pain coming from his broken bones. He crazily struggled, and the undercurrent seemed to calm down a great deal. There were even faint signs of collapse. He was overjoyed, but at this moment, a large group of strange fish suddenly appeared in his line of sight. They seemed to have smelled something. They moved their bodies like arrows, shooting through the water, rapidly approaching. "Ah, open it!" Yu roared out loud. He punched out with his intact arm. The undercurrent violently shook and then collapsed. But this fist actually affected his mortal injuries. His chest tumbled as if it could topple mountains and overturn seas. Yu's face flushed red, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Although the pain in his chest had subsided by more than half, his face was ashen, and he didn't hesitate to turn around and flee. As expected, the approaching strange fish at the bottom of the lake let out excited cries, and their speed suddenly increased. Yu used his hands and feet to float upwards. As long as he left the bottom of the lake, these strange fish wouldn't be able to do anything to him. However, he was enveloped by the undercurrent and pulled to the depths of the lake. In addition to his current state of injury, the explosive power of his body was extremely limited, so he couldn't rush up for a while. Seeing the strange fish at the bottom of the lake come closer and closer, a cruel light flashed in Yu's eyes. Even if he couldn't escape, he wouldn't resign himself to death. Suddenly, his body seemed to pass through some invisible barrier. The black lake water in front of him became incomparably clear. Yu was startled. He turned his head and saw a school of strange fish crashing into the invisible barrier. Pa! Pa! The strange fish exploded, turning into bits and pieces of flesh and blood. In the blink of an eye, they were cleanly swallowed up by their fellow clansmen. Then, these strange fish turned and left, vanishing without a trace. He survived. Yu was stunned. He hurriedly rushed towards the surface of the lake. The clear lake water lost its terrifying weight, and he easily broke through the surface. As he gasped for breath, he looked at the island in front of him and couldn't help but smile. It really was the island at the center of the lake. It seemed that his luck was quite good. When he was swept away by the undercurrent, he hadn't been swept backwards. Instead, he had been sent to the edge of the island. Not too far away, 3 titans appeared at the edge of the lake, their faces full of excitement. As for the 2 that had disappeared, it was likely that they had encountered some sort of accident. Yu took a deep breath and endured the pain in his body. He used his hands and feet to crawl out of the lake. His body slumped down on the shore, not even willing to move a finger. But at this time, a cool aura shot out from the island and fused into Yu's body. Then, all of his injuries began to regenerate at an astonishing speed. In just several breaths of time, he had completely recovered and was even stronger than before. Yu was stunned. After leaving the lake, the soul seal had disappeared, and he could clearly feel that his mortal body was much stronger than before. He turned over and stood up. Not only were his injuries healed, but all of his exhaustion had vanished. He was brimming with energy, and his condition was unprecedentedly good. Moreover, there was still a cool aura lingering in his body, slowly nourishing his flesh and blood. Humph! Lucky human cultivator. You have passed the test of the sacred lake, so you can naturally obtain the great totem's blessing. A Titan warrior sneered from the edge of the island, his eyes filled with indignation. Beside him stood 3 other Titans, all of them with ill intent. In their opinion, only Titan warriors were worthy of the totem's blessing. This human outsider simply didn't have the qualifications to obtain it, but he had obtained it. Moreover, they couldn't do anything about it. This left the Titan warriors depressed. Yu furrowed his eyebrows. He could see the dread in these Titans' eyes, and they clearly didn't dare to attack him. Since that was the case, he didn't need to care about their expressions. He turned and looked at the lake behind him. Standing on the island at the center of the lake, he could clearly see that within 100 feet of the island, the water had become incomparably clear. Outside of that, it was pitch black like ink. Many Titans had swum halfway to the island. They frequently looked up, but there was no joy on their faces. Instead, There was anxiety and a desire to retreat. As Chinyu thought back to what he had experienced before, he had some speculations. It seemed that as long as he entered the lake, unless he swam past the Black Lake, he would always find the island at the center of the lake out of reach, no matter when he looked up. This could also be considered a test. He gathered his thoughts. Now wasn't the time to think about these things. Chinyu turned and said, "Several of my friends are still in the Black Lake. Can you rescue them?" A Titan that understood the human language sneered. "Human outsider, the reason you stepped onto the island at the center of the lake is so that you can live. It doesn't mean that you have the qualifications to rescue others. If they cannot cross the sacred lake, then all that awaits them is death. They will become food for the fish." He turned and spoke several more words. The other Titans sneered again and again, all of them revealing mocking expressions. Chinyu's complexion darkened. But at this time, a voice suddenly sounded out. "It's you, human outsider." The Titans that had gathered together quickly retreated to the side, lowering their heads in awe. Chinyu's eyes brightened. "Tuba," he hurriedly said, "brave warrior Tuba, I have some friends that accidentally intruded into your tribe. They are still in the sacred lake and will soon be in mortal danger. I hope that you can rescue them." Tuba frowned. "Tribe traditions? I can't change them," Chinyu said in a low voice. "If you agree to rescue them, then I will accept your challenge." Tuba's eyes brightened. "All right." He turned around, his voice deep and dignified. Although the Titans weren't willing, they didn't dare to disobey him. One of them walked to the edge of the lake and roared out several words towards the other shore. The other side quickly responded. Then, several Titans jumped into the lake and swam towards Tianyun and the others. Chinyu relaxed a little. He cupped his hands across his chest and said, "Thank you." Tuba grinned. "I can't wait to fight with you." His eyes blazed with heat. He licked his lips and stepped forwards. But at this time, he frowned, revealing a distressed expression. After hesitating for a long time, he resentfully gave up. "When we're done, let's fight again." Chinyu didn't know what would happen next. He nodded and let out a sigh of relief. Tuba was strong, but that didn't mean he was hiding his strength. If they really fought, even if he could win, he feared he would have to pay a tremendous price. Before the situation became unclear, keeping himself intact was certainly the best result. Tuba turned and walked away. His feet were like the wind as he soon vanished from the island. The several Titans by the lake looked at Chinyu. There was no longer any contempt in their eyes, but a faint awe. They already knew that the reason Tuba agreed to rescue them was because Chinyu had agreed to his challenge. With Tuba's status, he disdained making excuses to save others. Since he did this, it meant that Chinyu had strength that he valued and could even pose a formidable threat to him. This was why Tuba valued him so much. The Titans worshipped strength and had a deep awe in their hearts towards powerhouses. Although Chinyu was a human, he still obtained their respect. Chinyu didn't care about the change in attitude of these Titans. He kept looking at the lake, and only when he saw that Tianyun and the others had been rescued did he truly relax. After being rescued, Tianyun and the others were all confused. They couldn't understand why the Titans who had been so indifferent to them, as if they wished for all of them to die, would suddenly show such kindness. But this didn't stop them from returning to the shore. They were all excited, nearly crying tears of joy. Only when they approached death did they realize how precious life was. "This is great. This is great. I knew I wouldn't die here." "Huh, that Sheen you cruelly left just now. You probably didn't think we would be rescued." The Titan race's sacred lake test isn't as simple as what we experienced. Even if that person has some strength, he still might not be able to pass it. This is life. I hope he fails the test and is buried in the Black Lake. Perhaps because they wanted to vent the excitement in their hearts. All of the cultivators pointed their spears at Chinyu. Their resentment soared to the heavens, all of them wishing for him to die here. Tianyun frowned. Although he also felt a bit uncomfortable that Chinyu didn't save them. Thinking about it afterwards, he knew that it would be difficult for him to survive alone. He feared that he wouldn't be able to save them at all, and if he saved them, he would have to pay with his life. Although he had helped Qinyu, Tianyun didn't believe that Qinyu needed to repay him with his life. Although his methods were cruel, they weren't wrong. Xiong Yuena remained silent. She only thought that with the strange behavior Qinyu had revealed, he wouldn't easily lose his life. Tuzin stood at the side, a strange expression on his face. He sneered, interrupting the chattering crowd. I'm really curious. Why would that human outsider called Qinyu save you as soon as he stepped onto the holy island? Chapter 387. Tianyun's complexion changed. It was Qinyu who saved us. Tuzin mocked. Otherwise, do you think we suddenly had a kind heart? I really want to know what kind of expression Qinyu will have if he hears what you're saying. Their faces flushed red, and their embarrassment nearly condensed into essence. The several people who had been talking loudly just now wanted to dig a hole and crawl into it. How shameful! They had been cursing and cursing Qinyu just now. But who knew that the only reason they survived was because of Qinyu? Xiong Yuena revealed an expression as if she already knew. How could someone who had transformed into a devil and then recovered to their original state die so easily? But she immediately felt a headache. If Qinyu didn't die, what would she do if he killed her to silence her? But if he really wanted to kill her, all he needed to do was stop the Titans from saving her. Just what was this person thinking? Xiong Yuen's mind was in chaos. Tianyun's complexion paled. He angrily glared at his companions, incomparably disappointed. At the same time, he felt a deep sense of guilt. He faintly guessed that the reason Qinyu hadn't said a single word was because he wanted to save energy. It was clear he didn't have any confidence he could cross the Black Lake on his own. Perhaps he already wanted to move. Only after he passed the Black Lake's test would he have a chance to save them. But before this, he had actually been secretly dissatisfied with Qinyu's actions. Thinking of this, Tianyun's guilt deepened. He looked towards the island at the center of the lake and faintly saw a figure looking in his direction. Qinyu, I'm sorry. You must come back in one piece. I owe you an apology. Tianyun clenched his fists within his robes. On the island at the center of the lake, Qinyu smiled as he saw Tianyun and the others being rescued from the Black Lake. He had finally repaid a favor. He never imagined the reactions of Tianyun's companions. Of course, even if he knew, he wouldn't care. This was because the one he wanted to save was Tianyun alone. The others were just incidental. He didn't care if he didn't know them. He turned and walked deeper into the island. Qinyu's expression was calm. After avoiding all the Titans, his hand flashed, and he took out the invisible half-disc. At this time, it emitted a burning heat. Even with Qinyu's powerful demon body, he still felt a bit of pain. A strong feeling surged into his mind. The thing it sensed was on this island. Qinyu maintained his composure. He used his divine sense to probe his surroundings. After he didn't sense anything wrong, he followed the directions and headed deeper into the island. The island at the center of the lake wasn't too large. Soon, Qinyu arrived at the core of the island. But what left him frowning was that there were actually several Titans resting here. Tuba's figure was within. As Qinyu arrived, these Titans swept their eyes over him. Some revealed playful looks, some mocking looks, some filled with fighting spirit. Qinyu's heart chilled. He could feel a tremendous pressure from the eyes of these Titans. Each Titan was no weaker than Tuba. Without using the power of the burning heavens, dealing with one of them was probably his limit. Humph! Tuba coldly snorted, his eyes sweeping around. The Titan warriors looked away, but there wasn't much awe on their faces. They didn't want to provoke Tuba, but they also didn't fear him. Without expression, Qinyu walked straight toward the large stone and sat down cross-legged. Even Tuba couldn't help but frown at this action. A Titan warrior shouted, "Human outsider, this isn't a place you can come to. Leave immediately." Qinyu's complexion darkened. "I passed the totem test, so why can't I come here? I don't dare to go against the will of the totem, but if you dare to offend it, then I, Tutu, will punish you." Tuba said in a low voice, "You should leave." Qinyu shook his head. "I have the qualifications to be here." Tutu sneered. "Tuba, it's not that I don't want to give you face, But this human outsider doesn't know the immensity of the heavens and earth. He suddenly stood up and took several steps forwards. The earth rumbled and trembled as he hurtled forwards like a bolt of lightning, his fist punching out. Qin Yu's complexion changed. He never thought that Tuda would dare to attack him. He hurriedly raised a hand to block. With a loud explosion, he stuffily coughed. The stone beneath him shattered, and he was forced backwards. Tutu coldly said, "Leave this place." Qin Yu clenched his teeth. Without a single word, he turned and left. The Titan warriors behind him roared with laughter. Soon, Qin Yu was far away from this area. The anger and gloominess on his face instantly vanished. He lifted his hands, excitement in his eyes. In his left hand was the half-disc he had obtained in the mountain valley. In his right hand, there was also a half-disc. Just now, Qin Yu had sensed that the source was in that stone. He had no choice but to lure Tutu into attacking, but he never thought that there would be a second half-disc hidden in that stone. As he pretended to be shaken backwards, he followed the guiding strength and grasped the disc in his hand. Two half-discs. This was a bit of a tongue twister, but Qin Yu couldn't care less. He subconsciously licked his lips, a bit of hesitation in his eyes. He didn't know what would happen if he connected them together. If there was too much movement, then that would be bad. Whatever, he would endure it. Once he left the Titan tribe, he would connect them. But at this time, Qin Yu's complexion changed. The two discs in his hands forcefully pulled his hands together, causing them to collide. There was a light cracking sound in his ears. Qin Yu's back was instantly covered in a cold sweat. His body stiffened like iron, and it was only after several seconds that he began to gasp for breath. Luckily, when the two discs merged together, there wasn't any movement at all. Otherwise, Qin Yu rejoiced inwardly. He quickly traced the discs. After they merged together, there wasn't the slightest crack in the middle, as if they had truly fused together. But that was it. He still couldn't see it, couldn't sense it, and there was no response when he poured his magic power into it. Besides two becoming one, there was no change at all. Qin Yu flipped his hand and put away the disc. He determined that this object had a great origin. It didn't matter if he couldn't find a way to activate it. He would have plenty of time in the future. He casually found a place and sat down. He carefully sensed the cool energy coiling around his body. It was slowly increasing the intensity of his mortal body. He estimated that at this rate of consumption, he could maintain it for at least half a year. During this period of time, Qin Yu's mortal body would continue to strengthen. Perhaps he would be able to reach the small success boundary of the King Step demon body. The General Step and Commander Step demon bodies didn't have different grades. But after stepping into the King Step, the demon body would truly enter a profound boundary, and there would be all sorts of mysteries. For instance, the King Step demon body had a chance of awakening a demon body combat skill at the small success, large success, and perfection levels. This sort of combat skill, when combined with the demon body, could erupt with an extremely fierce attack. In its natural state, the demon body would constantly grow stronger over time. In around 30 years, one could reach small success. The energy provided by this island shortened this process by dozens of times. Unfortunately, he didn't know where this cool energy came from. If he could obtain a bit more of it, he might even be able to grow his demon body to large success or even perfection in a short period of time. Qin Yu cautiously probed out with his divine sense. Although native life forms didn't cultivate the soul, after experiencing the heaven-shaking blood energy fluctuations of the tribe, he didn't dare to be careless. Who knew whether or not these titans, whose mortal bodies had reached an inconceivably terrifying boundary, would develop some sort of divine sense detection ability. The island at the center of the lake wasn't too large. With Qin Yu's current soul cultivation, he could easily cover it with his divine sense. He searched bit by bit, but found nothing in the end. However, with the disc in his storage ring, Qin Yu didn't dare to completely believe that his divine sense was completely blank. Since he couldn't find anything, Qin Yu retracted his divine sense. He no longer wasted any energy and closed his eyes to meditate. Although he didn't know what he would face next, it wasn't wrong to maintain his peak condition. Time passed. In the blink of an eye, several hours passed. Chinyu opened his eyes and looked at the bright skies. Although he was already used to this, he still couldn't help but reveal a look of surprise. This should have been a time of thick darkness, but it was still daytime in the infinite realm. Or it could be said that within the infinite realm, there was no concept of night at all. At the very least, since Chinyu entered, he hadn't seen nightfall. His thoughts stirred, and he suddenly thought of the little blue lamp's characteristics. If the world was always bright, could it still emit that ghostly blue light? As soon as this thought appeared, Chinyu's heart inexplicably throbbed. He couldn't help but feel an impulse. After a moment of hesitation, Chinyu left behind a trace of his divine sense. With a thought, his consciousness blurred, and he seemed to cross through endless space. When he opened his eyes once more, he had condensed a figure with the help of his blood and appeared in the distant nothingness, in a massive space connected by the sealed dimension ring. After entering the infinite realm, dangers could arrive at any time. This was the first time Chinyu's consciousness had arrived. He soon discovered that the entire space was different. Although the Earth was still broken, it was much better than before. The speed of repair far surpassed his expectations. Even at the distant edges of space, the cracks that had collapsed had completely vanished. Chinyu's divine sense body revealed a look of shock. He looked up at the great sun that emitted endless light and heat. His eyes pierced through all illusions and fell onto the core of the little blue lamp. At this time, the little blue lamp had turned a ghostly blue color for 2 feet around it. This light seemed the same as before, but Chinyu could feel that it was vastly different. Moreover, the light of the little blue lamp could actually extend out 2 feet. This in itself was inconceivable. His thoughts raced. Chinyu lifted a hand and grasped the air. The only living being in the sealed realm, that green grass, appeared in his hand. The grass swayed in excitement. It wrapped around Chinyu's arm, sending out a message of joy and submission. This green grass was more than twice as large as before. Moreover, the veins in the center of the grass had turned a faint silver color. This silver color was extremely thin, but Chinyu could feel an extremely terrifying aura coming from it. After a long time, Chinyu's thoughts stirred, and his divine sense body vanished from sight. On the island at the center of the lake, he opened his eyes, a thoughtful look on his face. Although he didn't know why the little blue lamp had suddenly become so formidable, there was one thing he was sure of. This was related to the infinite realm. Chinyu looked up at the bright skies, a sharp light flashing in his eyes. Up until now, the little blue lamp had given Chinyu the greatest help. But it had always been mysterious and unfathomable. Besides the will of the world wanting to erase it, there was nothing else he knew. But today, Chinyu felt as if he had truly touched upon a secret that belonged to the little blue lamp. As for what this secret was, he would need to slowly unravel it. At this time, a strange fluctuation suddenly arrived at the island at the center of the lake. A bubble appeared and wrapped around Chinyu. His complexion changed, but he didn't resist. He allowed the bubble to wrap around him and fly him into the air. Sure enough, from other parts of the island, bubbles rose up one after another, each bubble wrapping around a titan. The bubbles rose higher and higher, faster and faster. The island at the center of the lake, and even the entire canyon of the Titan tribe, all of it became incomparably small before finally vanishing from sight. The bubbles tore through the clouds and fog, rising upwards and upwards, as if they wanted to break through the barriers of space and reach another world. Hashtag, 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 hashtag. Chapter 388. Chinyu's eyes shook. The bubble rapidly shuttled through the clouds, its speed so fast that it was hard to see what was happening outside. Even so, it continued to accelerate without any signs of stopping. Looking from afar, the 17 bubbles in the sky were moving forward at an astonishing speed, tearing and piercing through the clouds and mist, leaving behind long white traces. It was like 13 paths leading to heaven, reaching the end of the world. After an unknown period of time, the fog that filled his vision suddenly vanished. An incomparably horrifying gale appeared outside the bubble. This was the astral wind of the highest heavens. It had the power to destroy flesh and blood and extinguish the soul. Not even blue sea cultivators dared to easily touch it. Chinyu's heart raced several times. If this bubble burst open at this moment, and he fell into the astral winds of the nine heavens, then no matter how powerful his mortal body was, he would still turn to ash. Fortunately, it was unknown how this bubble was condensed. Although it looked thin and weak, it actually possessed unimaginable power. It shuttled through the astral winds of the nine heavens without trembling in the slightest. In fact, after it entered the nine heavens astral wind, its speed of ascending suddenly increased by a large margin. The friction between the bubble and the astral wind produced a terrifyingly high temperature. The surface of the bubble actually ignited with raging flames. The 17 giant fireballs continued to ascend with indescribable power. The corners of Chinyu's lips twitched. He was well aware that if he were to come into contact with even a trace of it, he would be burnt to ashes by the flames outside the bubble. However, such a terrifying flame still couldn't shake the bubble in the slightest. This shocked him, and at the same time, he finally realized something. The mysterious totem in the giant tribe was much stronger than he had imagined. Its power had reached an unimaginable realm. He suddenly thought of something. The infinite realm had already collapsed, and not even the blue sea realm could withstand the power of rules. Could this totem with transcendent methods have perished in the endless river of time? As soon as this thought appeared, Chinyu's expression darkened. He faintly guessed that in the current land of divinity and demons, even the most powerful calamity immortal realm cultivators couldn't compare with totems. Just what sort of calamity could cause such a supreme existence to perish? On the road of cultivation, once one reached the divine soul realm and had many hidden cards in their hands, they would be considered a powerhouse of their own domain and would have the strength to protect themselves. But now, it seemed that this path was even longer and longer than what he knew. Perhaps what he saw now was only the tip of the iceberg that was revealed amidst the lingering clouds and mist. Chinyu took a deep breath and suppressed his tumbling thoughts. With his current boundary, it was far too early to consider these things. As long as he lived and walked forward step by step, there would come a day when he would arrive. The blazing flames outside the bubble illuminated Chinyu's face. His expression was firm and tranquil, his eyes surging with confidence. At this moment, the bubble trembled violently, as if it had hit some sort of shackle. Its speed rapidly decreased, and the burning flames on the outside quickly extinguished. Chinyu fiercely looked up. He saw 17 air bubbles gathering together and crazily rushing outwards, like a bowstring being pulled tighter and tighter. Suddenly, a heaven-shaking explosion exploded in Chinyu's mind. It was fierce and terrifying, as if the heavens and earth were being split apart. His ears buzzed, and his face paled. The next moment, all the bubbles seemed to have broken free from all restraints and floated in the boundless nothingness. Everywhere one looked, one could only see boundless darkness. The void in the outer world. This thought subconsciously appeared in Chinyu's mind. Then, the bubble he was in suddenly sank. Whoosh, whoosh. In an instant, all the bubbles passed through the confinement. It seemed to refuse the things inside from leaving, but it didn't stop the outside from entering. The bubbles sank faster and faster until they entered the astral winds once more. Blazing flames burned around them, and when the flames vanished, all that was left was the familiar clouds and fog. Chinyu's eyes widened. Could it be that the powerful totem that the Titans believed in, after setting up the test of the sacred lake, was only sending them up into the heavens to gain some experience? He turned to look at the other bubbles. As they fell into the world, the bubbles separated once more. It was impossible to see the expressions of the other titans. Chin Yu could only suppress his thoughts and helplessly wait. Finally, the earth reappeared in his line of sight. This was a boundless lake, or perhaps it would be more accurate to call it a sea. But Chin Yu inexplicably knew that this was really just a lake, just a bit larger. Chin Yu's eyes widened, and he couldn't help but reveal another look of shock. The bubble flew straight through the world and then fell straight back down. But the place where it finally landed was no longer the canyon where the Titan tribe was. This sort of mystery was far from what the current Chin Yu could understand. And in this inconceivably large lake, there was also an island. On this island, lush forests and palaces could be faintly seen, their edges propping up the heavens. The atmosphere was extraordinary. At this time, Chin Yu's complexion changed. The invisible disk in his storage ring appeared in the outside world without warning. In the next moment, it appeared in his line of sight for the first time. Its surface was covered with countless exquisite runes that emitted a faint light. Shwa, the disk, and Chin Yu vanished from sight at the same time. Deep within the infinite realm, on the island in the middle of the lake, two cultivators from both sides had their complexions change, joy in their eyes. It had opened. The two people glanced at each other and shouted out together, "Activate the array." Bang, bang. The cultivators on both sides each activated their own secret arts. A black and a white beam of light shot up into the skies, crashing into the void above the island. Then, a black and white vortex condensed in the skies. Within the vortex, the black and white lights were like fish, howling in the air. Let's go. Step into the mystic realm and obtain good fortune. Over 100 cultivators on both sides howled into the black and white vortex. In the skies above the incomparably massive lake, 17 bubbles slowly fell down. When they were dozens of feet from the ground, they quietly burst apart. The sturdy bodies of the Titan warriors heavily fell onto the ground. With a loud rumble, the earth shook and the surrounding ancient trees rustled. Tuba took a deep breath. Ever since he was born, the annihilation aura that had shrouded him had completely disappeared. A feeling of freedom swelled up in his heart, and he couldn't help but grin, revealing a brilliant smile. He swept his eyes around, and his complexion changed. The 16 Titans were all here, but Chin Yu, who had come with them, was nowhere to be found. But at this time, before Tuba could speak, above their heads, a black and white light suddenly appeared. With a loud rumble, it expanded, turning into a vortex. Whoosh, whoosh, figures flew out from the vortex. In the blink of an eye, over 100 people appeared. As they swept their eyes over the island below them, excitement filled their eyes. Tuba angrily roared, "Human outsiders!" The eyes of the 16 Titan warriors instantly turned red. Terrifying blood energy fluctuations erupted from their bodies. This was a transcendent lucky chance bestowed upon the Titan race by the totem. Everything here could only be obtained by the Titan warriors. We'll be leaving first. I'll leave these big fellows to you all. The handsome youth nodded. He crushed a jade talisman in his hand, and a white light wrapped around everyone around him. Then, with a slight distortion, they vanished from sight. On the other side, the black-robed cultivator coldly humphed. "Let's go too." Without any movement from him, a black hexagram appeared on the ground. With a flicker, everyone was teleported away. Damned human outsiders. How did they get in here? Chin Yu, that human outsider called Chin Yu, has disappeared. It's him. It must be him. I will definitely kill him. The Titan warriors angrily roared. But they couldn't find the human outsider that had teleported away. They could only grit their teeth and walk deeper into the island. In a state where Chin Yu didn't know what was happening, he had already shouldered a great blame. But even if he knew, he couldn't care less about it. When the air bubble arrived in the skies above the island, the disk suddenly appeared, teleporting him away. The moment he vanished, Chin Yu felt a surge of excitement in his heart. This was because all of this seemed to be saying that he had walked into a great stroke of luck, and that he was about to obtain a great harvest. But reality gave him a rude awakening. After arriving in this incomparably massive arena that resembled a coliseum, a terrifying divine sense impact directly descended upon him. His mortal body wasn't injured, but his soul felt as if it had been tossed into a storm. You could only bitterly persist. Any mistake would mean death. And what was most terrifying was that this divine sense impact seemed endless. You had already persisted for nearly 2 hours, and it still hadn't stopped. He was secretly anxious. If this continued, and he couldn't resist it, his soul would be instantly torn to shreds. He tried to move his body, but the air was as heavy as a mountain. He couldn't move it at all. Yu bitterly smiled. Could it be that he had obtained the strange disc through a lucky chance? But in the end, he was going to die because of it? Another hour passed. Yu's complexion was deathly pale, and blood began to seep out from his nose and mouth. Layers of shadows appeared in front of him, and his vision darkened. He was about to reach his limit. Within his soul space, Spirity's face was filled with anxiety and anger. But she was still in the position of raising her hand, unable to move at all. A boundless aura was suppressing her. The shadow beneath Yu began to wriggle like water. The face of the summoning god appeared. As it looked at Yu, its eyes flashed. It was unknown what it was thinking. Hold on, I can do this. I cannot fall. Yu bit his lips, his body shivering. But at this time, the terrifying divine sense impact suddenly vanished. His feet buckled, and he fell to the ground, gasping for breath. Shwa! A figure appeared in front of him. It was translucent. It was clearly only an image. Only by resisting the divine sense impact will you have the qualifications to open the true test. You have 2 hours to rest. This is your reward. The phantom flicked its sleeves, and a purple light fell into Yu's body. As the purple light entered his body, it appeared in Yu's soul space and turned into a purple rain. Spirity's eyes widened, a look of shock on her face. As she looked at Yu's soul, there was even a bit of envy in her eyes. Unfortunately, this purple rain was bestowed upon Yu. Even though she was his partner soul, she had no way of obtaining it. All of the raindrops seemed to have a mind of their own. They fell onto Yu's soul, and every time a drop was absorbed, his soul would gently tremble. A crescent purple moon shadow appeared above Yu's soul. As the purple rain was absorbed, it became increasingly solid. But when the purple rain disappeared, this crescent purple moon shadow was still a bit short of condensing. After losing its strength to supplement itself, it began to rapidly shake, as if it would collapse at any moment. Spirity took a deep breath. She stepped in front of Yu's soul and lifted a hand. Kacha! The surface of the soul bead that the good fortune tablet helped condense was instantly covered with cracks. In the next moment, it exploded, turning into a massive amount of pure soul force. Then, all of this soul force was like a river returning to the sea, instantly absorbed by the purple moon shadow. After obtaining this soul force, it finally stepped into the critical stage of its transformation. It turned from illusory to real, sprinkling down a pale purple light. Spirity's body swayed, and her complexion paled. But as she looked at the moon's shadow, she revealed a brilliant smile. Chapter 389. Shwa. Yu's soul opened its eyes and looked at Spirity. After a moment of silence, it earnestly said, "Thank you." Spirity smiled. "As a partner soul, my fate is one with yours. Helping you is the same as helping me." She paused for a moment and continued to say, "When you are strong enough, I will tell you everything. The most important thing right now is to find a way to pass this test. Believe me, this is the greatest good fortune you will ever encounter. You must do your best to obtain it." She turned and stepped away, vanishing from sight. Yu's soul revealed a dignified expression. He looked up at the purple moon in the skies. Bathed in its purple light, the damage to his soul was being restored at an astonishing speed. And this was only the reward for passing the test threshold. Once he truly passed the test, what he obtained would surely be astonishing. In the blink of an eye, 2 hours passed. The phantom punctually said, "Time's up." This was a black-haired old man. His back was straight, and his face was cold, and there was no emotion in his eyes. With a flick of his sleeves, a black cage appeared out of thin air and covered Chinyu. In a moment, underworld guards will appear in the cage. Kill them with all your strength. The more you kill, the more likely you are to pass the test, and the more generous your rewards will be. If you cannot withstand it, shout out that you admit defeat, and you'll be transmitted out. The black-haired old man vanished. He coldly said, "Begin." Schwa. Within the cage, black fog suddenly gushed out, and a figure walked out. Its facial features were blurry, and one could only see a pair of crimson eyes. Its 30-foot-tall body crazily released a cruel and destructive aura. This was an underworld guard. With a loud roar, it lifted a hand and grasped out. A saber appeared in its hand. The saber burned with black flames, icy cold and without heat. The saber slashed down. Chinyu lifted a hand and punched out. A wild strength erupted, instantly shattering the saber and crushing it. The underworld guard instantly collapsed, turning into black fog that dissipated. It was actually so weak, Chinyu was startled. But at this time, another underworld guard appeared from the black fog. It also condensed the saber and chopped down. Chinyu didn't dare to be careless. But after punching out, the underworld guard was instantly killed. This was the test. It was too simple. Outside a giant temple, thousands of feet high, it seemed to be the residence of a heavenly deity. Although it was empty, it still emitted a heaven-shaking aura. At the entrance of the hall, there were 2 black sculptures. One was an ape holding a stick, and the other was an eagle with its wings spread. Not far away, dozens of cultivators stood together. The leader of the group looked at the 2 statues with a solemn expression. He turned and chatted with several people around him. After finishing his preparations, he smiled at a female cultivator not too far away and said, "Junior apprentice, Sister Ning Ling, don't get too close. After all, your strength still has a more critical use." In the crowd, many female cultivators revealed looks of envy. Although their senior brother was gentle, he had never been so concerned about them. Although he was jealous, he didn't dare to reveal any of it. This was because this junior apprentice, Sister Ning Ling, had the most noble divine Tao bloodline flowing within her. It was rumored that once she fully awakened, she would have the chance to inherit 9 Heaven Mirror Moon Palace. At that time, she would be a peak character within the immortal sect. As the crowd approached, the 2 statues quickly came to life. The black stones on their surfaces fell off, revealing their true forms. Rumble, the terrifying aura was like a surging tide, erupting without restraint. Outside the black rockery, another group of human cultivators stared at the base of the mountain, at the blooming purple flower, their eyes blazing hot. This is truly worthy of being a legendary space fragment that comes from beyond the world. There is actually such a wondrous treasure like the demon origin flower. The young cultivator in the lead had an overbearing aura. He coldly said, "Kill." Bang! Billowing demonic energy shot into the skies. The space around the demon origin flower twisted and 2 phantom life forms appeared. With a loud roar, they hurtled towards the crowd. Chinyu punched the saber-wielding underworld guard. Then, he stepped forwards and punched the underworld guard's chest. The underworld guard's body instantly disintegrated, turning into black energy that vanished from sight. But at this time, Chinyu didn't have the least bit of joy on his face. Instead, he bitterly smiled. He finally realized just how freakish this test was. The underworld guards were endless. They were indeed weak at the start, but as Chinyu killed more and more of them, the strength of the underworld guards increased. Now, Chinyu needed at least 2 punches or even 3 punches to kill one. But as long as one died, the underworld guard would immediately reform. There was no time to catch his breath. Schwa, from the black fog, another underworld guard walked out. Chinyu's pupils shrank. This was because this underworld guard was wearing a suit of armor. He lifted a hand and condensed the saber. Black flames ignited around it as it fiercely cut down. Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat. He could feel a threat from this saber. He lifted his hand, and his sword appeared. It erupted with blinding sword light, incomparably sharp. 5-element sword metal. The saber and sword collided. The saber broke in half, and the sword light cut through the underworld guard's neck. A head shot into the skies. Whoosh! The underworld guard's body collapsed. In the blink of an eye, another one walked out. Outside the giant temple, the stick-wielding ape and rock's corpses lay on the ground. Their bodies were covered with wounds, but not a single drop of blood flowed out. In fact, there was even a strange dark silver color to their flesh. This or a puppet technique is truly inconceivable. Even in my immortal sect, we are far from being able to compare. The senior apprentice brother had a look of praise on his face. He ordered the 2 puppets to be placed into his storage ring. He lifted a hand, and the phantom of an oil lamp condensed in the air, flying into the temple. After several breaths of time, the senior apprentice brother faintly smiled. There's no danger. Let's go in. Beneath the rockery, the last phantom life form had its chest pierced through by a fist. Its sharp claws stiffened, and it immediately dissipated into gray energy. Humph! The overbearing young cultivator drew back his fist. He lifted a hand, and the demon origin flower flew into his hand. After looking at it for several moments, he revealed a satisfied expression and then placed it into his storage ring. Let's continue forward. A group of cultivators walked past the rockery. A stone wall appeared in front of them. 5-colored sword lights swirled, turning into a vortex that covered the underworld puppet. With a cruel roar, the 5-colored sword light vanished from sight. The underworld guard had been killed. Qin Yu's complexion paled, and he bitterly smiled. Ever since he put on the armor, the strength of the underworld guard had rapidly increased. It was only now that he erupted with the 5-element swords that he was able to smoothly kill it. Roar! From the black energy, a new underworld guard walked out. Its crimson eyes shined with a faint silver light. As this silver light locked onto him, Qin Yu's heart shrank. Without hesitation, he stepped forwards. The 5-element swords erupted, turning into a vortex that fell down. But this time, the underworld guard was actually able to resist the murderous attack of the 5-element swords. It roared out again and again, the saber in its hand constantly chopping down. Qin Yu's complexion soon changed. This was because he discovered that as the saber chopped down more and more times, it erupted with an even more terrifying strength. It was as if each saber could superimpose its strength. According to this rate of increase, the underworld guard would soon be able to tear apart the 5-element swords. Not daring to delay any longer, Qin Yu roared out loud. The strength of his demon body surged out, and his combat strength instantly rose. Puff! Puff! The underworld guard's body disintegrated, turning into fog and vanishing. But in the blink of an eye, a new underworld guard walked out. The silver light in its eyes became even brighter. The 5-element sword's vortex arrived. As the underworld guard walked out of the black fog, it was killed where it stood. Then there was a third, a fourth, a fifth, all the way until the 9th underworld guard appeared. Qin Yu's all-out 5-element swords was blocked by the saber in its hand. Then it slashed out a second saber, a third saber, a fourth saber. Qin Yu paled. The underworld guard saber potential became increasingly strong, each saber more ferocious than the last. Unless he erupted with the power of the burning heavens, that would be his limit. 172 underworld guards. He had no idea whether or not this was enough to complete the test. As he thought of Spirity's solemn warning, he hesitated. But soon, Qin Yu suppressed the thought of using the power of the burning heavens. The consumption of this technique was far too terrifying. He could only maintain it for 2 or 3 breaths of time. At most, he would be able to kill several underworld guards. Just as Qin Yu was about to shout, "Admit defeat," the summoned life form suddenly appeared in the shadow beneath him. The 100 nether sword in its left hand struck out like a poisonous tongue, instantly piercing through the underworld guard's body. The underworld guard trembled and collapsed into black fog. But at this time, the summoned life form sucked in a deep breath. A trace of black fog flew over and fell into its mouth. You could clearly feel the excitement in its heart. Shwa, the black-haired old man appeared. His sharp eyes stared at Undying. Anyone that interferes in the test will be considered a failure and will be severely punished. Undying's voice was calm. I am Master's summoned battle general, so I can naturally step in on Master's behalf. Is this also against the rules? The black-haired old man frowned. He lowered his head and thought for a moment. Then, he lifted his palm and a black sphere of light appeared. He respectfully said, May I ask, my lord, is it allowed to summon battle generals during the test? The black sphere of light was quiet, without the least bit of response. The black-haired old man waited for a moment. Then, he formed a hand seal, and the black sphere of light changed color. Motes of silver light appeared within the pitch-black light. His voice became even more respectful. Forgive me for disturbing the commander. Is it allowed to summon battle generals during the test? There was still no response. The black-haired old man hesitated. After a long time, he clenched his teeth and formed another hand seal. The silver sphere of light shined with a bright golden light. This subordinate has been rude and disturbed the temple master. This is a crime deserving of 10,000 deaths. But there's one matter that this subordinate needs to confirm. Is it allowed to summon battle generals during the test? There was complete silence. The black-haired old man paled and sweat dripped down his forehead. He looked at the golden sphere of light and hesitated several times before putting it away. His expression became indifferent once more, and he coldly said, According to the rules, Shangwan's silence can be regarded as tacit agreement. So, summoning battle generals is in accordance with the rules. The test will continue. Shwa, the black-haired old man vanished from sight. Undying strangely chuckled. He threw himself at the underworld guard that emerged from the black fog. The 100 nether sword was like a bolt of black lightning as it pierced through its head. Then, with a deep breath, a wisp of black fog fell down, and it let out an excited roar. Qin Yu's complexion was strange. That extraordinary black-clothed old man phantom seemed to be a very rigid program. Thus, Undying was able to find a loophole. However, this was clearly a good thing. As Qin Yu watched Undying cut through the underworld guards as if they were vegetables, his eyes gradually lit up with excitement. In a short period of time, the number of underworld guards he killed had broken past 200. Undying was still relaxed and satisfied. Moreover, as he swallowed the black fog, his attacks became increasingly swift and fierce. If this continued, completing the test would be far too easy. Hashtag, 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 hashtag. Chapter 390. I found it. With a shout of joy, an immortal sect disciple crushed a jade slip in his hand. Soon, a massive number of cultivators from the same sect gathered from all directions. Senior apprentice brother. Greetings, senior apprentice brother. Wonrin Dongwe smiled as he walked forwards. After carefully inspecting the node, he patted the shoulder of the disciple who found it and warmly said, Very good. The immortal sect disciple seemed as if he had received the greatest encouragement. His face flushed red with excitement. The surrounding immortal sect cultivators all revealed looks of envy. To be praised by senior apprentice brother Wenren was enough to brag about for dozens of years. Wenren Dongwe turned. Junior apprentice sister Ningling, I'll have to trouble you. Ningling nodded. She arrived beside the node and closed her eyes to sense it. Then, she pointed a finger. In the void, layers of golden light gushed out, forming phantoms. Each one had a boundless aura and released endless dignity and dignity. Wenren Dongwe revealed a look of praise. This was truly worthy of being the bloodline of God that even his teacher held in such high regard. Its might was inconceivable. He could actually feel a bit of suppression from this golden light. The other immortal sect cultivators were the same. Their faces were filled with shock and awe. The bloodline of God was something they had only heard rumors about. Today, they had personally experienced the power of this bloodline. It was truly incomparably formidable. The node gently trembled. A faint light appeared, condensing into a large door. Ning Ling took a step back, and the golden light around her vanished. Her expression was still calm, but her face was a bit pale. It was clear she had consumed a considerable amount of energy. Wenren Dongyue cupped his hands together. "I've troubled Junior Apprentice Sister." He took out a pill. "This pill can help Junior Apprentice Sister quickly recover. Please accept it." Ning Ling hesitated for a moment. "Thank you, Senior Apprentice Brother." Wenren Dongyue smiled. He turned and said, "I will lead the way. Junior Apprentice Brothers and Sisters, follow behind me." As he spoke, he was the first to step into the door of light. The immortal sect cultivators all revealed looks of admiration. With their Senior Apprentice Brothers' honored status, he actually didn't hesitate to take the risk to lead the way. Just how rare was that? One immortal sect cultivator after another entered the door of light. Ning Ling fell in the center. Several immortal sect disciples followed at her side with vigilance. They had received orders from Senior Apprentice Brother Wenren to protect Junior Apprentice Sister Ning Ling with all their strength. This was because the immortal sect was going all out today. After entering the door of light, everything turned dark and light returned. Everyone found themselves on a massive chessboard. The horizontal and vertical lines on the chessboard stretched as far as the eye could see. This chessboard was so large that they couldn't see the end. At this time, Wenren Dongyue's eyes had turned a faint gray color. A strange and mysterious feeling exuded from his body. He was still standing there, but the feeling he gave off was incomparably distant, as if he weren't in the same world. After a long time, his eyes returned to normal, and there was a look of praise in them. The Heaven and Earth chessboard is named after heaven and earth. Although it is a bit exaggerated, the mysteries within are truly inconceivable. Senior, your strength is exceedingly high. It's not something that I, a junior, can imagine. I'm impressed. Beside him, a female cultivator looked at him with adoration in her eyes. She smiled and said, "Senior Brother Wenren, the ancestors of my sect peered into the mysteries of heaven, but they could only deduce this much. As for how to solve this chess game, it's up to you." Wenren Dongyue smiled and shook his head. "Junior Apprentice Sister Ding praises me too much. Not even the ancestors of my sect were able to see through this game. So how could I possibly do it? I only thought of some tricks, but I don't have much confidence in whether or not these tricks will work. Senior Apprentice Brothers' plans are flawless. We all know that. Although this chess game of heaven and earth is mysterious, it absolutely cannot block our path forward." Another immortal sect cultivator said. This person had an ordinary appearance, but his eyes were sharp and bright. It was clear he was someone with a firm will. Senior Apprentice Brother Jing is right. We will definitely be able to break through and obtain the greatest lucky chance in this land of the outer realms. The female cultivator, surnamed Ding, earnestly said. Wenren Dongyue laughed. "I am a disciple of the immortal sect, so I naturally have this kind of courage and boldness. Then, I will fight with my fellow junior apprentice brothers and sisters." At this time, his eyes flashed. Our old friends aren't slow either. A huge black hexagram appeared, tearing the space apart. Many stern figures walked out from it. The overbearing man in the lead raised an eyebrow. He coldly said, "Wenren Dongyue, although you aren't too good at fighting, your ability to run isn't bad. You actually managed to catch up to me." The immortal sect disciples were all enraged. But as the overbearing man swept his eyes around, the immortal sect cultivators all lowered their heads, none of them daring to meet his gaze. He sneered and revealed a look of disdain. But soon, he discovered that there was actually a woman who wasn't affected by him at all. His eyes flashed, and he suddenly said, "Could this be the rumored junior apprentice, Sister Ning Ling, that the immortal sect obtained from the land of exiles with the bloodline of God?" Ning Ling had a calm expression. "Greetings, Senior Apprentice Brother Wuma of the demonic path. How interesting, how interesting. Amongst a group of commoners in the immortal sect, there is actually such a lovely and charming little girl as Junior Apprentice Sister. I, Wuma Sijan, would like to court Junior Apprentice Sister. I wonder if Junior Apprentice Sister would be willing to become my Tao companion? Wuma Sijan smiled as he spoke. Wenrin Donwell lightly said, Wuma Sijan, although you are the leader of the demonic path's demon son, you should still feel awe towards my immortal sect. Wuma Sijan laughed. If I don't, what can you do? Wenrin Donwell took a step forwards. His aura erupted and a great sun descended. Boundless momentum swept through the highest heavens. Across from him, the elite disciples of the demonic path and their guardians all revealed looks of shock. The smile on Wuma Sijan's face vanished. His overbearing and disdainful aura was like endless black clouds that blocked out the skies. Both sides faced each other. The air was so heavy that it seemed as if it would freeze over. The immortal sect and demonic path cultivators behind them all found it hard to breathe. Only a few of the more powerful cultivators on both sides had cold eyes that shined as they prepared to fight. The immortal sect and demonic path were both extremely strong. They were both transcendent influences in the land of divinity and demons. Normally, they maintained peace on the surface in order to prevent chaos and order from collapsing. But the cultivators of both sides fought in secret, killing each other without end. Both sides' hands were stained with the blood of the other side. It was only because this matter was kept secret and the immortal sect and demonic path intentionally suppressed it that the outside world didn't know of it. Now that they had stepped into the outer realms, although the immortal sect and demonic path had to join forces to open the channel, they were already nearing the final good fortune. If there was a chance, both sides wouldn't mind heavily wounding the other side and eliminating them early, or even completely exterminating them. At this time, in the skies above the chess game of heaven and earth, another channel appeared. This channel was crimson red. 16 tall, Titan warriors with eyes as large as bells walked out. As they saw the immortal sect and demonic path cultivators, they angrily roared out, "Human outsiders, how dare you come here? This is blasphemy against the great totem. Only your blood can quell the anger of the totem. Titan warriors, kill them and defend the dignity of the totem." Bang, bang. After passing through the screening and arriving here, every Titan was a true warrior of their tribe. Now, killing intent erupted from their hearts, and billowing blood energy fluctuations caused one's heart to tremble. In particular, Tuba and several other Titans. Their blood energy was so strong that even Wenrin Dongyue and Wuma Sijan frowned. "Calm down," Tuba roared out loud. He stubbornly pulled back the red-eyed Tutu. "Do not forget why we came to the Holy Land today." The enraged Titan warriors revealed unwilling expressions. They gasped for breath, their eyes still as fierce as before. Tuba took a deep breath. His icy cold eyes swept over the crowd. "Intruding my tribe, totem holy land, blood enmity, we will definitely take revenge." He turned around, about to lead the Titan warriors into the chess game of heaven and earth. When Rendongyue's figure flashed, and he blocked in front of them, he cupped his hands together and said, "We took the risk to intrude into this place in order to seek lucky chances. We have no intention of making things difficult for the Titan warriors, but we do not have the means to pass through the chess game of heaven and earth. I ask fellow warriors to help us." What he spoke was actually the language of the Titans. Hearing his words, the Titans sneered again and again. Tutu crazily roared, "Human outsiders, we have received the approval of the totem, so we can naturally pass through here. You could just wait for your deaths here. You want us to help you? Dream on. Stop dreaming." Wenren Dongyue's complexion was calm. He lightly said, "Although we cannot enter, it shouldn't be difficult to stop you all. Your race's holy land is only open for a limited time. Once it closes, neither side will obtain anything." Tutu roared out, "You dare." The Titan warriors all seethed with killing intent. Wuma Sijan laughed. "Wenren Dongyue, You immortal sect people are truly despicable. I can't believe you could think of such a method. He took a step forwards. Then, count my demonic path's participation in this matter. If we cannot obtain any good fortune, then we can all return empty-handed. Tuba's complexion paled and his eyes filled with anger. But he was well aware that if it was only the immortal sect blocking them, then the Titan warriors would have a chance to break through. But with the demonic path cultivators added in, it would be impossible for them to pass. All of you shut up. We must agree to this matter. Otherwise, if we cannot obtain the blessing of the totem, our tribes won't be able to last much longer. No matter how angry or unwilling they were, they had to accept this. Despicable human outsiders. We agree to bring you in, but you can only bring in 5 people at most, not one more. Unfortunately, this sort of unfair distribution trick was useless against the outstanding disciples of the immortal sect and demonic path. Wuma Sijan sneered. My demonic path wants 5 spots. Wenrin Dongwell lightly said, the immortal sect also wants 5. Tuba roared, impossible. The Holy Land can only allow 17 people to enter at most. You have taken too many. It is impossible for us to agree. Wenrin Dongwell calmly said, you will agree. Because while we can withstand the consequences of failure, you cannot. Tuba's body shivered. The Titan race's current situation was their greatest weakness. His eyes turned red, and he coldly said, fine, we agree. When had the dignified Titan warriors been reduced to the point of being forced by others? Many of them shed tears of humiliation. These damned human outsiders. Tutu suddenly roared. Qin Yu, I, Tutu, swear on my honor as a warrior that I will tear you to pieces. Qin Yu, I, the Titan warrior Tuzan, swear that I will kill you. Human outsider Qin Yu. In the Titan warrior's opinion, the reason the immortal sect and demonic path cultivators could enter was because of this spy, Qin Yu. So at this time, the one they hated the most was Qin Yu. Qin Yu was an extremely unfamiliar name. The immortal sect and demonic path cultivators were surprised. They had no idea what this cultivator called Qin Yu had done to cause the Titans to hate him so much. Moreover, what did the current situation have to do with this Qin Yu? Only one person's eyes widened the moment he heard the name Qin Yu, revealing a look of disbelief. Shua, that you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.